Chapter 277. No one would ask what Li Hongyuan sent people to do. This was not within their scope of authority. As to whether to report to Lu Qingdi or not, that was their business. So they all thought at the same time. Did he not avoid the taboo? No matter if it was Yu Zhongqing or Li Suyan. They were all experts, and would not show their emotions on their faces. It was just that Yu Zhongqing felt that his master who had just assumed office not long ago. Did he also take Li Suyan under his command? If so, he would not find it strange. This master's position, compared to the other princes, was much higher. This also explained why he did not avoid the taboo. Of course, this was only his guess. If not, he might be exposed in front of the emperor in the future. So what? As early as when he chose a new master, he already had this awareness. Li Suyan's thinking was slightly different. He did not hide anything from Lu Qingdi. The premise was that it was within his scope of responsibility, or was related to him. His task this time was to listen to Jin Qinhuang's orders. Everything else naturally had nothing to do with him. In his view, Li Hongyuan did this either because he did not have a guilty conscience, or deliberately did it for them to see. Therefore, the two of them could be said to be Lu Qingdi's left and right arms. There was no tacit understanding to speak of. They were once loyal to Lu Qingdi, but the number of contact was pitifully little. In the end, it was because Lu Qingdi's guard was too heavy. Even if they were his confidants, he did not let them come in contact. Li Hongyuan went to the rear residence. Even Yu Zhongqing, who needed to be close to protect him, would not be an eyesore at this time. Jingwan was quite surprised that Li Hongyuan could tolerate Yu Zhongqing and Li Suyan, who were like shadow followers, and basically never left his side. Li Hongyuan's explanation was that their existence was similar to that of bodyguards. It was not considered as tolerance. Of course, the so-called similar had nothing to do with trust. Although one would not get dizzy on a boat, it would not be as comfortable as walking on solid ground. Unless it was someone who walked outside all year round. Jingwan felt a little tired, and needed a good night's sleep to adjust. At this time, he truly felt the benefits of a certain someone's insistence on bringing so much luggage. They were all things that he was used to, so he wouldn't feel uncomfortable using them. This kind of thing, everyone should have experienced. When something was replaced with a new one, it required a process of readaptation. It could be long or short. If it was not as good as the original, one would involuntarily feel different degrees of disdain. When people were tired, they didn't have to experience this feeling. It couldn't be better to be in a comfortable state. Li Hongyuan was considerate and did not torture her, nor did he do anything else. They hugged each other and went to sleep early. Li Hongyuan probably knew that those people would inquire about his whereabouts, so he didn't deliberately hide it. Therefore, when the group of people learned that he had slept with the princess, they couldn't help but look at each other. Even they, who were busy with government affairs, didn't sleep so early, let alone those who had rich nightlife. Even if Jin Qinhuang would not be easily moved by beauty, wasn't it normal for him to relax a bit? Thus, he continued to make discreet inquiries, and the results were not disappointing. The princess consort was not feeling well, so Jin Qinhuang really loved Jin Qinhuang Fei very much. However, since Jin Qinhuang Fei was not feeling well, then it was natural for his foreign to pay a visit. Jingwan didn't know that her own husband had found trouble for her again. The whole morning was as usual. Li Hongyuan looked at his wife's sweat like rain. That flexible figure, he really couldn't get tired of looking at it 100 times. With regards to Li Hongyuan's teasing, Jingwan also bluntly retorted, Wang Ye should pay more attention. If one day the flesh on your body grows soft, or even a big belly, remember to send someone to sleep in the study. If you don't recover, don't think about returning to your room. Jingwan's words. If it was someone who only had the relationship of husband and wife, the other party would probably leave in a huff and tell her that there were many women who were willing to sleep with him. Of course, they were only husband and wife and didn't have any feelings. Jingwan also wouldn't say something that was purely a joke. Would Wanwan really be so heartless? This husband really wants to give it a try. Thinking about the incomparably handsome king of hell turning into a fat man with a big belly, even if Jingwan wasn't someone who cared about appearances, Just thinking about that image made her eyes stinging. Well, jokes were jokes. Even if he really became like that, she couldn't really drive him out. Not because of the other party's identity, not because he was her husband, but because he was her lover. Although it hadn't reached 100%. But Jingwon knew that if it continued like this, it would happen sooner or later. Unless he went to sleep with another woman now, she wouldn't be able to extricate herself. Okay, if Wang Ye wants to try, how about this concubine also try? Li Hongyuan rubbed his chin with interest. Wan's husband singing and wife following suit. My heart is very comforted. This husband is also looking forward to Wan's fleshy body. That taste should also be quite wonderful. He even deliberately swept the tip of his tongue across his lips, as if he couldn't wait to have a taste. That look in his eyes also seemed to want to peel off Jingwan's skin. Jingwan was speechless. Facing this bastard, she could only be defeated. She casually threw the handkerchief she used to wipe her sweat over. Not only did he not dislike it, but he also deliberately sniffed it twice and narrowed his eyes slightly. He seemed to be enjoying it, as if he wanted to have her sweat. Jingwan's body inexplicably trembled. She simply ended it in advance and left. But she heard the bastard's wanton laughter. Sure enough, the king of hell was the king of hell. No matter who he met, he was more than a level higher. Li Hongyuan's original purpose was to bring Jingwan out to have fun. He had been in a hurry in the beginning, because he didn't want to hear the urgent nagging of the emperor. Wan would definitely not have a good time. But now, since he was already on the verge of it, there was no need to hurry. He would stay in Kaming Mansion for 10 days to half a month, and visit the surrounding areas. Therefore, those who couldn't wait for Li Hongyuan to leave quickly would be so angry that they would vomit 3 liters of blood if they knew about this. Nanny Gong and the others had already known Li Hongyuan's purpose, so they had basically prepared everything to go out. After breakfast, they rested for a while. Jingwan saw a man who looked to be in his early 30s. His skin was darker than ordinary people. At first glance, he looked like a person who worked outside all year round. Jingwan was quite curious about why her husband specially asked such a person to come here. However, Jingwan found that this person seemed to be more respectful to her than to the king of hell. Generally speaking, when the couple sat together and greeted each other, it was enough for them to bow to each other. However, he bowed to each other separately. When he bowed to each other, he especially turned to one side. It was obvious that he was bowing to her. Jingwan was very sure that she had never seen this person before. Then why did he behave like this? He is the one who got one of the 10 purses from Great Elder Princess. He is also the one you specially sent to teach him. Now he works in the Ministry of War and cooperates with you in drawing the geomantic map. Jingwan's eyes lit up. That's the one. He's practically traveled all over Qiyuan Empire and has also set foot in many neighboring countries. His memory is also very outstanding. Basically, there's no place that he can't remember, including the characteristics and terrain. He can remember everything clearly. He is like a living geomantic map. Your Highness, you flatter me. The living geomantic map said modestly. Li Hongyuan glanced at him and was a little unhappy. Your Highness, you remember it clearly. Jingwan grabbed Li Hongyuan excitedly and did not notice his strange behavior at the moment. Yuan, thank you. How could she not know that he specially brought this person out for her? To be honest, no one could be so considerate as this man. Not even her grandmother could be so considerate. Li Hongyuan's eyes softened when he saw her beaming with joy. She even called him a nickname that she only used in private when there were outsiders present. Since she was so happy, he did not want to dampen her spirits. He reluctantly treated the living geomantic map as a dead one. Moreover, their first impression of the living geomantic map was exactly the same. It's good that you are happy. I think that with him, we should be able to have more fun. Jingwan nodded. That was right. This map was more useful than the electronic version of the map. It was simply a must-have for traveling. After the excitement, Jingwan became more reserved and began to chat with the living geomantic map. For a moment, she forgot that someone was a minefield. She immediately paused and said, I don't know your surname. If he was called the living geomantic map, it would be rude. Your Highness, you are too polite. My surname is Sure. The living geomantic map hurriedly responded. Jingwan felt that he seemed a little nervous. Oh, it's Mr. Sure. Speaking of which, Prince used public resources for private purposes, because of me this time. I hope that it won't delay Mr. Sure's business. Your Highness is too serious. To be able to contribute to Your Highness, this official feels honored. These words were not false. Originally, in the entire group, the others were selected by others. Only he was personally selected by Li Hongyuan. Originally, he was busy, and because his knowledge was put to use, he was preparing to show off his skills. Suddenly, he had to go on a business trip. His mood was not very good. However, he did not have the right to refuse, and could only sullenly follow along. It was only when he knew that his benefactor, Jin Qin Wang Fei, was also present that his mood subsided. Previously, when he found out that Jin Qin Wang Fei was going on a trip, and needed him to lead the way, the last bit of sullenness completely disappeared. Speaking of which, Wang Fei's grace is like a new life. I have long wanted to thank Wang Fei in person, but I never had the chance. I was deeply afraid that I would offend Wang Fei, and did not dare to pay you a visit. Having this opportunity is truly the fortune of 3 lifetimes. What does Princess Consort want to know? I will tell you everything I know in the next pass. Sure, Darren doesn't need to be like this. The matter at that time was just a coincidence. My original intention was to contribute to the Qi Yuan dynasty. I only hope that the Qi Yuan dynasty will prosper. If it wasn't you, it would be someone else. Therefore, Sure Darren really doesn't need to care. No matter what the prefix was, as long as it was related to the word affection, Jingwan did not want this affection to be too deep and heavy to bear. I don't know anything. I want to learn something, but it's useless. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't learn it. Don't talk about disappointing my family and clan. Don't even talk about my career. Almost everyone looked at this official, as if they were looking at a piece of trash. This official was once dispirited, and gave up on myself. If it wasn't for Wang Fei's people who came to my door and exhausted their efforts, that purse would not have landed in this official's hands. How would I be able to enter the Ministry of War? This official was placed in an important position. My parents were gratified and my wife was happy. This official could confidently talk to my children about the magnificent mountains and rivers of Qi Yuan. No one would say that those things were useless, and would only say that it was amazing. Furthermore, the way my children looked at me was also filled with respect. At the same time, my family's status in the clan also rose. Wang Fei was the first to acknowledge the things that I had denied. She even used this as a way to embark on a completely different life. How could I forget such kindness? Not only this official, but the entire family also wishes to kowtow to Wang Fei in person to express our gratitude. After all, Wang Fei was already precious when you were still in the boudoir. Now you are even more precious. Other than a word of thanks, there's really nothing I can do to repay you. Living Geomancy Map spoke with sincerity. Jingwan sighed softly, and did not know what to say. In fact, Jingwan knew a little about this official's situation. In order to make better use of that purse, there were some things that needed to be clarified. However, she only heard about it from Nanny Gong. What she heard was only the general situation. Now it seemed that it was not so easy to just change the owner of the purse. Thinking about it, it made sense. The opportunity to show one's face in front of His Majesty might lead to a bright future. It was not so easy to give it away. Therefore, the person that Nanny Gong sent out to persuade her was also a talent. Li Hongyuan gently pinched Jingwan's mouth. Whatever Wang Fei says is what it is. There's no need to say anything else. If Wang Fei has a good time on this trip to Jiangnan, I will count it as a great merit. He did not hide his purpose at all. Not far away, Yu Zhongqing and Li Suyan lowered their eyebrows and narrowed their eyes. They held the hilts of the sabers at their waists, and stood straight like wooden pillars. It was as if they did not hear anything. This official will do his best. In order to have a good time, Jingwan was determined to travel light. It was still a mighty group of people. Others could tell at a glance that they were not ordinary people. Not clearing the area was the same as clearing the area, but there would be no atmosphere. Of course, Jingwan also knew that their identities were special. It was impossible for them to be like ordinary people. Her request was only to make them look like a rich young master taking his wife out on a trip. It was enough. There must be a lot of hidden guards. She knew very well that on this trip to Jiangnan, her husband had blocked many paths. If he was really impartial, many people would suffer. Who could guarantee that these people would not take the risk? Compared to Li Hongyuan's life and wealth, sightseeing was nothing. What Jingwan could think of, Li Hongyuan could naturally also think of. Moreover, with Wan Wan by his side, he naturally had to be foolproof. He could not even affect Jingwan's sightseeing. The arrangements could not be incomplete. No matter how relaxed he looked on the surface, it could not be denied that he did things in secret. After having people deal with the people who were watching around the courtyard, the group of people went out through the back door. It was obvious that if those officials knew, not long after they went out, there would be one chance encounter after another. The sightseeing could be stopped. Not only did they prepare a carriage, they also prepared horses. It was not that they were worried that Jingwan would be uncomfortable sitting in the carriage for too long. She would not stay in the carriage for too long for sightseeing. It was just that in some places, it was more fun to ride a horse. At this time, the carriage and the servants followed behind the two people walking hand in hand. The guards on both sides slightly opened the way for them. The living map historian was 2 steps behind Jingwan to the left. He explained the cultural and historical characteristics of the Kaming mansion to Jingwan. As Jingwan walked, her attention was almost attracted. The living king of hell expressed his displeasure, but he had to admit that the living geomancy map was indeed amazing in this aspect. To say that he was a living geomancy map was actually a disgrace. Even Li Hongyuan himself was attracted by it, so he suppressed his displeasure and multitasked. While listening, he led the way for his wife, who was too engrossed to prevent her from going astray. Speaking of which, food was also a part of a place. Lord Shi specially introduced 2 kinds of food to Jingwan. There might be food in other places, but it was definitely not as delicious as the Kaming mansion. Jingwan's appetite was aroused. She wanted to eat such little food. Naturally, she bought and bought. Jingwan asked people to buy more for everyone to try. They rested for a while in the tea house next door. They waited for the people who bought the food to come back. However, they only bought one kind of food. The other kind was limited every day, and was said to be sold out. They could use their status to pressure people, and ask them to make it immediately. Not to mention that the princess would not allow it. It would also expose their whereabouts. I'm incompetent. The guard did not do the job well and apologized. What does it have to do with you? Jingwan overstepped her authority, and waved her hand to ask him to leave. The guard did not even look at Li Hongyuan's reaction, and retreated to another table. Jingwan asked people to distribute most of the food. This was her habitual behavior. In the eyes of others, it was a reward. And the people who had done it for the first time were even a little flattered. It was not the first time. At the beginning, Jingwan was a little helpless. After many times, she was used to it and just waved her hand. Jingwan tasted it. It was very delicious, and also quite unique. I don't know what the Kaming crisps taste like. It's a pity. I can only try it another day. Speaking of which, it's a little surprising that it was sold out so quickly. After all, relatively speaking, the price of Kaming crisps is not cheap. Very few commoners can afford to eat it. It's still early today. If it was not bought out by a rich family, it should not be sold out so quickly. Lord Shi continued. Is that so? Then there's no other way. However, we will not be staying in Kaming Mansion for one day. It doesn't matter if it's one more day. How can Ben Wang's Wang Fei be so wronged? Later, let someone go to the other courtyard to make it. Not to mention the people who served Jingwan, including Lord Shi, Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyan and the others, all naturally thought so. Wasn't it so? A dignified Wang Fei eating something from you was a great favor. What was the reason for wanting her to wait another day? Jin Qin Wang Fei did not make things difficult for her, because she was benevolent. Jingwan wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, she decided to let it go. This was a matter of perception. It was created by the social background. It was not something that could be explained clearly in 1 or 2 sentences. Moreover, if she said too much, other people would not feel that she was right. They would feel that she was deviating from the norm and associated with the common people. It was not a big matter, so there was no need to haggle over every ounce. Let's go? Jingwan said with a smile. Li Hongyuan nodded and took the lead to get up. Very naturally, he reached out to support Jingwan. His every move was seen by Lord Shi. Because of Jingwan's kindness, he believed that it was not only him. The other 9 people, as long as they knew how to repay kindness, they all hoped that Jingwan could be well, have a good husband, and have a happy family. At the time when she was bestowed the marriage with Jin Qinwang, they had a lot of worries in their hearts. But they could not say it, they could not care. After all, she was an outsider. If they interfered, it would have a bad influence on her. Thus they could only watch helplessly. However, up until now everything was good. The happiest thing was that Jin Qinwang loved her deeply and did not throw her to the side after marrying her. Just based on Li Hongyuan's attitude towards Jingwan, Lord Shi's view of him had changed by 70%. Jingwan did not plan to leave the city today. She was prepared to walk around the city. According to what Lord Shi said, Kai Mingfu actually had a history of more than 2,000 years. It had been rebuilt on a large scale several times. Not only that, it was the capital city of 2 dynasties. It could be imagined that it should have a lot of advantages in many aspects. There were many places that were worth exploring. For example, there were some ancient buildings and treasures that recorded the detailed history of Kai Mingfu. In addition to these, there were also places similar to gardens in Kai Mingfu. That was not the private property of anyone in Kai Mingfu. Rather, it belonged to the public property that no one in Kai Mingfu could occupy. It was said that it was left behind by the first governor of the Kai Mingfu of the Qi Yuan dynasty. He was an old official of the previous dynasty, and his hometown was also in Kai Mingfu. He was not young, but when he was in office for 4 years, a sudden illness took his life. Before his death, he did something that was simply shocking in the eyes of the world. He donated all the property that belonged to his branch, and did not leave a single copper coin for his descendants, let alone his clansmen. He also declared that these things belonged to the entire Kai Mingfu. If it was occupied by an individual, it would mean that the Qi Yuan dynasty would change. These words were very ruthless and directly alarmed Emperor Taizu. Emperor Taizu personally made the decision and issued an imperial edict to acknowledge his last wishes. As a result, his clansmen who originally stomped their feet and did not want him to enter the ancestral grave all shut their mouths and did not dare to say another word. Not only that, they also had to give him a grand burial. Today, it was unknown whether those unseen legacies were still there or not. That garden was still there, and had even become a symbol of Kai Mingfu. When one arrived at Kai Mingfu, if one did not take a look at it, it would seem that one had not been here before. In Jingwan's opinion, this was simply the feudal version of giving away one's property for charity. When she first heard about it, Jingwan even suspected that this person had the same origin as her. After careful investigation, the possibility was too small, because other than that, he did not leave behind anything advanced. However, even Jingwan felt that it was inconceivable, because he was an aboriginal. How should she put it? The history of the Qi Yuan, and even the Qi Yuan before, was very similar to the history of her previous life. Under the feudal dynasty, the emphasis was on the family, the clan, the protection of the descendants, and the roots. Everything was done for the future generations. Giving away one's property to a person before one's death was something that no one could understand. Therefore, even those who had benefited from him did not understand, let alone agree with his practice. They only said that he was simply crazy. Jingwan felt that perhaps she could understand, because of her own reasons. She then asked Lord Shi about the governor's life and the situation of his descendants. Sure enough, when he was alive, he was the only one who held the highest position and power in the entire family. There was no one else who was decent. Although the property that he gave away was his private property, it was 70% of the total property of the entire family. It was no wonder that his clansmen were so angry. They even said that he was unfilial, as he even gave away the things left behind by his ancestors. They also could not blame him for using the Qi Yuan's fate as a curse. A few years after his death, his descendants were the first to rise, followed by the other clansmen. Until now, they had multiplied into a family that could not be underestimated in the entire Qi Yuan. The Wei family. Jingwan heard everything and sighed softly. This Governor Wei is really bold. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Lord Shi asked, Princess, why do you say that? Without destruction, there can be no construction. This is probably the reason why Governor Wei did this. The Wei clan, or perhaps the direct descendants of Governor Wei, should have something like a letter left behind by him. Otherwise, his earnest expectations and painstaking efforts would have been wasted if no one understood. I just don't know if he hid it away, or gave it to someone. Princess, your words are interesting, but you are the person who fits Governor Wei's temperament the best. Li Hongyuan said. I didn't understand it at first, but after listening to your words, I suddenly feel enlightened. It seems that the world has misunderstood Governor Wei. We are not as good as you, Princess. Lord Shi bowed. Lord Shi, you flatter me. Jingwan did not explain further. Perhaps Governor Wei's thinking was slightly more advanced than others. The Grand Secretary's second wife is from the Wei family. The second wife is also a descendant of Governor Wei. It's just that she is 5 generations away from the main branch. Li Suyan suddenly said. Jingwan was stunned. She didn't expect there to be such a connection. As one of the leaders of the blackguard, it was not surprising that she knew this. But did Li Suyan suddenly say this because she suddenly thought of this, or did she have a special intention? On the other hand, Li Hongyuan tilted his head slightly to look at Li Suyan. His gaze changed slightly. There was no doubt that Ruan Ruizhong's second wife was a spy. However, he now felt that things were not that simple. The most important point was that Governor Wei was an old official of the previous dynasty. There was a need to send someone to investigate. If there was no problem, it would be fine. If there was a problem, after listening to the story, Jingwan's attention was finally diverted. Then she realized that her husband seemed to be unintentionally attracting bees and butterflies again. As expected, being too good-looking was also a big trouble. But this trouble had an owner. Outsiders could only look at it. Caming Crispy? Is this the Caming Crispy that Lord Shi mentioned? Jingwan accidentally saw a restaurant and saw the signboard. Yes, Princess. Using the prefectural city as the name, and the name of the restaurant. It could be seen that he was very confident. It's so lively now. What's going on? Jingwan looked at the crowd blocking the entrance. Soon someone went to ask. When he came back, his expression was not very good. Master, the governor's son bought all the Caming Crispy. Speaking of which, the governor's son had taken a fancy to a girl who was engaged. But the girl's fiancé was a poor scholar. The girl's family was actually a nouveau riche. After hooking up with the governor's son, she did not like her fiancé anymore. And the poor scholar had to go bankrupt for a piece of Caming Crispy, https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6653473. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicon.com. Bikago mobile reading website, mbicon.com. Chapter 278. Speaking of which, the governor's son had taken a fancy to a girl who was engaged. However, the girl's fiancé was a poor scholar, and the girl's family was actually a nouveau riche. After hooking up with the governor's son, she looked down on her fiancé. As for the poor scholar, he had to sell his family fortune for a piece of Caming Crispy cake. And today's matter was a trap set up by the scumbag couple. A trap set up purely to humiliate the poor scholar. The kind that didn't require any technical content. The poor scholar didn't know that he had been cuckolded. Originally, he and his fiancée were childhood sweethearts. As her family gradually became rich, they gave him a lot of financial support. Of course, this so-called financial support was actually just to satisfy his basic needs for studying. They had ready-made ink, paper, and inkstone, the worst kind that didn't even have a copper coin in cash. Even so, his family was deeply grateful. In order to repay the kindness of his future in-laws, in order to let his future wife live a good life, he worked hard. The whole family also tightened their belts to provide for him to study. It could be said that he didn't care about the outside world, and only focused on studying. Many neighbors vaguely discovered the matter of his fiancée, but because he was the governor's son, they didn't dare to make it public. They only secretly laughed at him. His parents also vaguely sensed it, but didn't get any actual evidence. They were also afraid that it would affect their son's studies, so they didn't dare to tell him. His fiancée, who basically didn't come to visit, suddenly came to visit. She mournfully expressed that the girl next door also wanted to eat a piece of Caming crispy cake from her fiancé's family. She didn't need too much, just one piece would be enough. The poor scholar's face was not good. The poor scholar's face did not look too good. Not because of his fiancé's request, but because he could not even satisfy such a request. He had his own dignity and pride, but he did not want his parents to know. He took out the little money he had, but it was far from enough. Therefore, he tried his best to save money, write letters to people and copy books for the bookstore. It was very smooth, smoother than ever before. He even sold a few pieces of his unpresentable calligraphy. The other party wanted his calligraphy. It did not matter whether the paper was good or not, and it did not matter whether it was framed or not. He could be said to be extremely happy. The time it took to save money was much shorter than expected, nearly a month. He finally had enough money. Carrying a big bag full of copper coins, he went to the Caming Crisps restaurant. Seeing that he wanted to buy Caming Crisps, and that he only had one piece, the people around him all curled their lips in disdain, saying something like a poor person should have the self-awareness of a poor person. He didn't even have a complete set of clothes, and he was so greedy that he wanted to eat Caming Crisps. He was really a poor and despicable person. The poor scholar's face was flushed red, as if he had been stripped naked. He was at a loss of what to do. However, the shopkeeper helped him out, saying that anyone who entered was a customer. If he wanted to buy, of course he would sell it to him. He took the bag of copper coins, called 2 waiters, and counted them in front of him. In the end, there were more than 10 coins missing. The shopkeeper said that he was sorry. He did not have enough money, so he could not sell it to him. Hearing this, one should know that the shopkeeper was definitely not a good person. If he was really a good person, he would have just taken the money and given the Caming Crisps to him. Moreover, he most likely knew that the other party was short of money. 1 piece of Caming Crisps, 3 taels of silver, 3,000 copper coins, and only a dozen coins. How could such a big restaurant be short of such a small amount? The poor scholar was an honest person, or it could be said that he was wholeheartedly immersed in the pile of books, and was somewhat ignorant of the ways of the world. He actually did not notice at all. Yesterday, he had happily told his fiancée that he was going to deliver the Caming Crisps today. Now he did not know why he was short of money. He remembered to scratch his ears and scratch his cheeks. He gave up his dignity and humbly begged the shopkeeper to sell him a piece. At this moment, the shopkeeper's face was stern, and he righteously said that they were a restaurant, doing business, not a charity hall. If he was short of money, then please leave, and do not obstruct their business. The poor scholar had no choice but to take the money bag and prepare to leave. He did not care about other people's opinions, only thinking about how to explain it to his fiancée. When he turned around, he saw his fiancée enter, but she was in the arms of a noble young master. At that moment, the blood drained from his face. It was not only because his fiancée's gentle and soft face was full of ridicule, but also because she, a girl who was engaged, actually did not have any sense of propriety, justice, or integrity as she leaned in the arms of another man. His hand trembled as he pointed at her. You what you? You want a piece of Caming Crisps for a month? But I'm sorry, this lady is tired of eating it recently. You still don't know, right? If it was not for the young master's help, even if you saved up for a month, you would not be able to save up a piece of Caming Crisps. Speaking of which, you are really a good for nothing. The young master did not have the time to play with you for too long, so he kindly helped you. Are you happy that your calligraphy has been recognized? Unfortunately, it was thrown into a smelly ditch in the blink of an eye. Is the money not enough? I took it. Tell me, a person like you wants to marry this lady, making this lady suffer with you. Who do you think you are, making this lady suffer? Aren't you afraid that your lifespan will be shortened? The poor scholar's face turned pale, and his vision darkened. How could he not understand what was going on? Thinking about how he had been toyed with like a monkey by these people, and how his heart had been trampled on like this, he almost fainted. Young master, didn't you say that you have never seen what a copper coin looks like? How about I let you see it now? The fiancée turned her head and smiled tenderly at the noble young master who was hugging her. In public, she even reached out her hand to caress his chest and rubbed it with her full chest. How was this a woman from a good family? Even the prostitutes in the brothel were more reserved and courteous than her. The poor scholar staggered and almost fell. This kind of girl, this kind of person, was actually his fiancée? All right, this young master really wants to see it. As he spoke, the governor's son lewdly pinched the girl's chest. The girl pouted coquettishly and turned to the poor scholar, but her expression immediately changed. She took 2 steps forward and snatched the money bag from his hand. Opening it, she took out a string of coins and pulled the string open. The copper coins fell to the ground with a clatter. When the girl heard the governor's son clapping and cheering, her face became happier and happier. She moved even faster, scattering close to 3,000 copper coins all over the ground. There were more and more onlookers. Some joined in to watch the show. Of course, there were also those who expressed sympathy for the poor scholar. However, no one dared to say a word. The youngest son of the governor was famous in the Kaming prefecture for his lawlessness. He was a tyrant. When people saw him, many would immediately retreat. Shopkeeper, take out all of today's Kaming pastries. The governor's son looked at the poor scholar. Seeing that you have made this young master amuse himself for a month, I will give you all of today's Kaming pastries. After you finish them all, there will be an additional reward. The Kaming pastries were brought out. The color was plump, and the fragrance was enticing. Then, they were poured on the ground, and crushed by the governor's son with his foot. Hurry up, finish them all. The poor scholar was so angry that his whole body was trembling. You've gone too far. Oh, what are you saying? But, so what if this young master bullies you? Guards. 2 guards came forward and grabbed the poor scholar. One of them kicked the back of his knees, forcing him to kneel on the ground, and pressing his head against the ground. The poor scholar's eyes were red, and his eyes were about to crack. He roared in anger. Where is the justice? Where is the law? The world is not fair, the world is not. Ugh. His mouth was forcefully stuffed with crushed Kaming pastries. His eyes were filled with unspeakable hatred. Justice? The law. I am the justice. I am the law. Force it all down his throat. The onlookers could not help but retreat. There were quite a number of young masters, who hung out with the governor's youngest son, and they all knew what he was up to recently. Hence, they all came to watch the fun. Most of them were jackals of the same lair as him, and they clapped their hands and cheered. There were also a few who frowned at his behavior. This was really too much. Bullying others in such a manner was also harming oneself. Move aside. The people blocking the door were separated from the outside. 2 rows of people completely blocked the people outside, making a path in the middle. A group of people walked in. They were led by a man and a woman. They looked very noble and dignified. Although their clothes were not particularly luxurious, those who knew their stuff could tell that it was not ordinary, just by looking at the material of the clothes. Many people took a deep breath. This person was too good-looking. When did such a person come to Kaming prefecture? There were some who were still clear-headed, and immediately guessed the most likely identity of these people. Then they thought of the advice from their families, and their faces changed. Although a strong dragon could not suppress a snake, that was only because the strong dragon was not strong enough. If they met someone they could not afford to offend, they could crush you to death with a raise of their hand. You would not even have the chance to cry out your grievances. And this person, even if he was their father, they would have to lie down and hide. They absolutely could not provoke him. Subconsciously, he pulled the person beside him who was on good terms with him and stepped back. He looked at the door and saw that it was blocked. His hopes of leaving quietly were dashed. If he left from the back, it would be too obvious. His heart could not stop beating. Something bad was going to happen today. This youngest son of the governor was the #1 devil in the entire Kaming mansion. Moreover, his father had climbed up step by step from the Kaming mansion, which meant that he had been in the Kaming mansion since he was very young. His father had not been in power yet, and was kept in the mansion to abuse his power. As his father's power increased, he gradually bullied men and women outside. From the time he was born until he was almost 20 years old, he had never suffered any setbacks or been oppressed by anyone, because no matter what happened, it would be settled in the end. Therefore, the word fear did not exist in his dictionary. He did everything willfully without thinking. At this time, anyone could see that something was wrong, but he was the only one who was ignorant and had his eyes on Jingwan first. Jingwan might not be the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, but she was definitely a woman with the most outstanding temperament. For a person like him, she had a great attraction. This little lady. His lustful gaze swept over Jingwan from head to toe. Unfortunately, he stopped abruptly after saying 4 words. His body flew backwards, and his whole body landed heavily on the ground. Of course, the one who made a move was not Li Hongyuan. Because Jingwan was standing beside him, he was slightly slower. Someone dared to flirt with his wife in front of him. If he made a move, someone would definitely die. Perhaps it was because he sensed this that Yu Zhongqing made the first move. The #1 demon king of the Kai Ming constabulary had been kicked, which shocked everyone quite a bit. Naturally, his bodyguards subconsciously swarmed forward. However, they had only taken a step forward when they were instantly thrown to the ground. Their blades were snatched away, and the shiny blade was pressed against their necks. As long as they moved, their blood would splatter everywhere. The situation changed too quickly. For a moment, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. This was the real tough one. "How dare you attack me? Do you know?" Yi Zichen said. Yu Zhongqing stepped forward and stepped on his neck. He used his strength to crush the governor's son, who was trying to crawl up to the ground. "If you say another word, your head will be separated from your body." After nearly 20 years of life, he finally knew the word fear. Although he was angry, he did not dare to open his mouth. Jingwan did not stop Yu Zhongqing from making a move. This meant that she was really angry. Jingwan stepped forward and used a handkerchief to pick up a piece of Kaming crispy cake from the ground. "This is Kaming crispy cake? It looks pretty and smells good. When I asked someone to buy it before, they said that there was none left. It was a pity at first, so I thought that this thing was expensive. Looking at it now, it doesn't seem to be the case. I didn't even eat a piece. It was ruined by others." Her hand loosened, and the handkerchief fell to the ground. It was clearly a soft voice, but it made many people's legs tremble. Especially that shopkeeper. Beads of sweat rolled down his head. This madam, if you want to eat, we have as much as you want. Eat things that others stepped on for fun?" Jingwan asked indifferently. The shopkeeper's legs went soft, and he knelt on the ground. No. In the future, I don't want to see Kaming crispy cake anywhere, especially the Kaming crispy cake from Kaming residence. If I bump into it, I'm afraid that the relevant people will be sent to prison to squat for a while." Jingwan's tone did not change. "Wait until I die, then you can continue to sell it." The people of the present age were particular about exclusive secret recipes. They were very careful about the things passed down from their ancestors. The Kaming crispy cake from other places was probably just a form, so it was just changing the name. It should not cut off people's livelihood. As for whether this restaurant would be affected, it was not within her consideration. Jingwan walked to the front of that poor scholar. "Get up." The poor scholar was still a little dazed, but he still did as he was told subconsciously. But when he thought of his sorry state, he shrank back a little. A real man should be indomitable and stand straight with his head up and chest out. Jingwan's tone finally had some ups and downs. The poor scholar still acted before his consciousness. And at this moment, he saw clearly this extraordinary woman. Her hands were naturally folded in front of her lower abdomen. She was dignified and magnanimous, and her face was cold. In his eyes, she was like a fairy from the ninth heaven. His original thought of overturning all women, because of his fiancée's betrayal, instantly disappeared without a trace. But it was only a glance, and he quickly lowered his head, not daring to look again. It was not only because it was improper to look at her, but more importantly, it was blasphemy to look at such a woman directly. The world is indeed unfair. I don't know where the justice is, but the law is there. It's just that there's a lack of people to protect it. I'm giving you a chance now, and I'm giving you the best environment to study. I promise you that as long as I'm in power, as long as you have the ability, your future will not be hindered by external factors. I hope that one day, when others shout that the world is unfair, you can stand up and uphold justice for them, and tell them where the law is. Even if you can't make the world a bright place, you can still use your hands to sweep it clean. The poor scholar was moved. His lips trembled. After a moment he said, I definitely won't disappoint, madam. Jingwan nodded, and did not say anything else. She turned to the woman who was cowering at the side. Her eyes were cold. If you were forced and had no choice, it's fine. Even if you despise the poor and favor the rich, and want to climb up the social ladder, it's understandable. If you want to live a good life, you can't be wrong. You can just cancel the marriage. You shouldn't humiliate others like this. This is a complete corruption of character. Do you think that a person like you, even if you marry into a noble family, can really have the life you want? Daydreaming is unrealistic. Wake up. Even if she did not know Jingwan's true identity, the woman who used her connections to intimidate others did not dare to breathe loudly at this moment. How could they not see that what had truly angered this madam was not the caming cake, but the actions of the governor's son and the others? It was just that her status was noble, and a trivial matter was also a huge matter. In comparison, everything that the poor scholar had suffered, in some people's eyes, was actually nothing. If she wanted to use this as a pretext to make a fuss, no one could easily let things go. And those who had guessed in their hearts could now be 100% sure. Jingwan glanced around indifferently and walked to Li Hongyuan. You once told me that you and I are husband and wife, sharing honor and disgrace and equal status. Yes, I said that. So, what you said today is what I said. A self-proclaimed person who was still hoping for a fluke was also completely disheartened. Those who didn't know were shocked. Yesterday, there was a sea of people at the ferry crossing. Many officials had gathered, and they were all guessing whether or not some important person had come. Could it be this person, a prince? Jingwan's face finally showed a trace of a smile. The governor should be here soon. So what if he's here? Li Hongyuan glanced at the governor's son, who was still stepped on by Yu Zhongqing. He offended his superiors, disrespected the royal family, and claimed to be the law of the land. This is deceiving the emperor. So be it. Father has no reason to nag at me, but thinking that the princess does not want to see me kill people, I'll set a price and let the governor redeem him with money. This time, there is a big problem in Jiangnan. I'm afraid that Tongzhou County will not be clean. Just right, I'll help father fill the national treasury first. An arm, 100,000 taels. A leg, 150,000 taels. A descendant's root, 200,000 taels. A body, 300,000 taels. And a head, 500,000 taels. Muan, calculate the total for me. When the governor arrives, ask him for money. Just cut off the amount that is less. By the way, his son ruined my and the princess's fun. Add another 1 million taels. Let him calculate the money clearly before we talk about his son. Jingwan glanced at him. That was why she said that this person was the biggest cancer in Lang Lang's world. She had simply shot herself in the foot just now when she was swept clean by someone else. Also, is it really good for you to reveal the matter in Jiangnan? Although almost everyone knew about the college examination, the SALT policy was very well hidden. Since it was related to money, how could it be just a problem of the college examination? Those who did not care could not hear it, but those who cared would definitely listen carefully. As for the others, I'll count them one by one. The lowest rank is 100,000 taels. For every higher rank, I'll add another 100,000 taels. Let their fathers take the money to collect their bodies. If they don't pay for a day, I'll temporarily raise them for a day. If it's more than 3 days, I'll take the money to collect their bodies. Of course, 10% of the money is enough. I'm merciful and will not ask them for the money for food and accommodation. Master, don't worry. I'll remember it. I'll make sure that no one is wrong. No one is missing. A group of childs who came to watch the fun wished that there was a hole in the ground for them to crawl into and disappear completely. Living king of hell, living king of hell. He was really a real king of hell. Why didn't they listen to him and obediently stay at home for a few days? They obviously did not do anything, but they had to suffer such an unexpected disaster? It should be known that not all of them were favored at home. There were even some illegitimate sons who followed these people just to raise their status and make their official mother and brothers have some scruples. But now they were all wiped out. The biggest backer was the most miserable. With only 10% of the money, he could get rid of them quickly. There was no need to think about how the family would choose. They were so scared that they wet their pants. Their minds were in a mess. As if they were crazy, they wanted to escape. However, it seemed that a group of good-for-nothings could not escape from a group of well-trained guards. As soon as their front foot stepped out, their back foot was tripped and a hard foot fell on their back. They were stepped onto the ground and could not move. They struggled to resist, but the knife fell mercilessly. It was not fatal, but blood splashed everywhere. Screams sounded. How many people had seen such a scene before? They were scared and screamed. Shut up. Anise sternly reprimanded. This matter has nothing to do with you. Stay here obediently. When the matter is over, you can leave safely. Whoever dares to disturb the prince and princess will immediately become a ghost under the knife. As soon as these words came out, everyone quieted down. Even if they could not stop crying, they covered their mouths tightly and did not dare to make the slightest sound. Originally, as ordinary people, they also hated these tyrants. Li Hongyuan came up and ruthlessly tidied them up. Naturally, it was very satisfying. However, seeing blood and seeing people's lives as grass, that should make people afraid. Just like Li Hongyuan in the capital, there were only rumors that he had forcefully kidnapped women several times, causing many families to be ruined. As for what actually happened, no one knew. At most, it was just hearsay. More often than not, those silk pants saw him like a mouse seeing a cat. However, ordinary people saw him as a demon. Jingwan looked rather helpless, but Li Hongyuan did not care at all. Even if everyone in the world was afraid of him, it did not matter. As long as Wan was not afraid of him and stood firmly by his side, it was enough. Other people were simply not within his scope of consideration. The hurried and disorderly sound of horse hooves came from all directions. No matter if they were riding horses or sitting in carriages, they all gathered together. It wasn't just 1 or 2 people who were keeping an eye on the governor's courtyard. Many officials had sent people as well. In the end, they were easily knocked unconscious and thrown into a pile. When they were discovered, the people at the bottom almost lost their lives. Only then did they know that there was no one in the side courtyard. Because they did not know where they went and what they wanted to do, they were afraid that they would escape and have other motives. Naturally, they anxiously sent people to search for them. The waterways and the 4 city gates were all sent people to block. They could not sit still and searched in the city. Speaking of which, there were many people and they were scattered. There were a few people in the vicinity. Jingwan probably did not expect them to have such a big lineup. Perhaps Li Hongyuan was also within her expectations. In fact, before they entered Kaming Crispy Restaurant, they had already been discovered. They quickly went to report back to their masters. That was why they came so quickly. But before they arrived, another bad news came. Not only the governor, but as long as one had a vile spawn, they were all on tenterhooks, afraid that they would also be involved. In fact, Li Hongyuan's people had discovered the other party a step earlier. However, if they just coincidentally came up and disturbed Jingwan's original plan, Li Hongyuan would not give them face. When the officials received the news, They secretly hated the vile spawn for not listening to their words. If they had known earlier, they would not have let them take half a step out of the house even if they had to break their legs. They were also secretly angry that Li Hongyuan had nothing better to do than to make a private visit. You have been so high-profile all the way. Can't you continue to be high-profile? With them following, how could they let their vile spawn collide? Didn't they say that their princess consort was not feeling well? Going out so early, did it look like she was not feeling well? Standing at the entrance of Kaming Crispy Restaurant, the officials who were in a hurry did not have their usual elegant bearing. They either wiped their sweat with their sleeves or staggered in their steps. Without saying a word, they rushed to the front of the two and knelt down to beg for forgiveness. It was their negligence that caused their vile spawn to collide with the prince. Princess consort, please forgive us. Li Hongyuan looked down at them condescendingly and did not say a word. When the main character arrived, looking at his appearance, he probably already knew the truth of the matter. Otherwise, even his clothes would not be drenched in sweat. Li Hongyuan then slowly opened his mouth. You all are quite fast. However, this prince remembers that horses are not allowed in the city, and the carriage cannot be too fast. Looking at you all, you do have this prince's style. After all, this prince is in the capital. Occasionally, this prince will let the horses loose, but most of the time, it will only overturn the carriages of other brothers. This is not a problem for my brothers. However, along the way, how many people have you injured and how many stalls have you overturned? Are they your people? There is no need to question them at all. This was a matter that had not been resolved yet, and yet another matter had come up. However, a certain someone was too shameless. He could set a fire, but others could not light a lamp. If things went wrong, this would be another crime. Before they could even say a few words to him, one big accusation after another was placed on them. If this continued, there was no need to find the most fatal thing about them. They would have to take off their hat first. In the end, they still did not understand this person's way of doing things. It was because they were too flustered that they repeatedly made mistakes. They had to calm down, calm down, calm down. It is this lowly official's fault. Please rest assured, Your Highness. This lowly official will not say a word about how to punish them. Li Hongyuan chuckled. However, no matter how one listened to it, it sounded like mockery. If that is the case, then it can't be better. Servants, please invite the young masters of these officials out. Even if they tried their best to hide in the ordinary crowd, hoping that they would not be recognized and escape the disaster, in the end, they were still found out one by one. The deeper they hid, the more severe the physical pain they suffered. Therefore, when they were brought out, only a few of them did not have any bruises on their faces. After all, there were more than 10 of them in this group. Those who did not have their children breathed a sigh of relief one after another, while those who had 2 or even 3 children in their families almost fainted. Eunuch Mu stood out and repeated Li Hongyuan's words before. Just now, we have learned that among the elders of these young masters, the lowest official position is standard 6th rank, 100,000 taels of silver. Secondary 5th rank, 200,000 taels of silver. Standard 5th rank, 300,000 taels of silver, and so on. As for standard 2nd rank, 900,000 taels of silver is not a lot. Sirs, make sure that your children are in there, and what rank your official position is. Then you can go home and prepare the money. Of course, you can also prepare 10% of the money and collect the corpse 3 days later. Speaking of which, the higher the position of the elder, the more valuable the living person is. Correspondingly, the less valuable the corpse is. For 6th rank, you can only save 90,000 taels of silver, but for 2nd rank, you can save 810,000 taels of silver. If it were me, I could still make up 90,000 taels of silver. As for 810,000 taels of silver, I don't want this money-losing thing. Jingwang glanced at Eunuch Mu. To be honest, if she were these people, she would definitely want to eat him alive, especially the money-losing thing he mentioned. Muan, shut up. Eunuch Mu shuddered and immediately retreated to the side like a lackey. As the saying goes, if the son is not taught well, the father is to blame. These young masters of the Kaming mansion are really surprising. What do you think they are doing? Of course, I am just a woman. If I say these things, everyone here will probably think that I am a hen in charge. It is just that Prince Yi has always been impatient with everything. So I overstepped my boundaries and said a few more words. If there is anything inappropriate, I hope that everyone here will be magnanimous and not take it seriously. His Highness, I am not in the mood today. Let's go back. Don't be long-winded with these people. Only you have a good temper, but they won't appreciate it at all. Li Hongyuan seemed to be reproaching, but his tone was gentle. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653480. HTML. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com mobile edition. Chapter 279. Why are you being so long-winded with these people? Only you have a good temper, but they won't appreciate it at all. Li Hongyuan seemed to be reprimanding, but his tone was gentle. Since I'm no longer interested, I'll naturally go back. In any case, he paused meaningfully. This Kaming manor, other than those irritating things, everything else is pretty good. It's not a big deal to stay for 10 days or half a month. Otherwise, before returning to the capital, I'll stay in Kaming manor. As for the other matters, other people will take care of it. I believe that many people will be very happy. In the 4 counties and 28 manors of Jiangnan, there were countless officials. Each one of them was on tenterhooks. After knowing that you were an imperial envoy, they didn't have a good night's sleep. If you stayed in Kaming manor, those people could only say that they were happy. That was definitely not enough to describe it. It could be said that they would sing and dance in celebration. However, the officials of Kaming manor were probably going to vomit blood. Originally, it had nothing to do with them. Kaming manor was just a place they passed by. Now they had to face the king of hell alone. If it was easy to serve, no, it didn't need to be easy. It didn't need to be easy. As long as they could serve him, then they would do their best to wear out this period of time. The problem was that this master was completely impossible to serve. No matter what you did, he wasn't satisfied, he wasn't happy, and he would pick on you. He would throw a tantrum at the slightest thing. How was it possible for people to live like this? Jingwan, who understood Li Hongyuan's temperament more and more, lit 32 candles for these people, and observed a moment of silence. Speaking of which, those people who relied on him early on, how did they muddle through under his hands? Needless to say, those were true warriors who had been tempered into steel. However, there was one thing that could be confirmed. Those who had been properly trained by Li Hongyuan, their efficiency in doing things was definitely very high. After all, if they did their job well, they could obtain relief. If they didn't do it well, they would be endlessly destroyed and tortured by him. Over time, everyone's spirit would weaken, and they would lose the will to live. The only way was to do everything in one go and face him less if they could. All of their motivation was not to receive praise, but to avoid torture. This could be considered a great oddity for all eternity, right? Alright, the king of hell was quite generous when he was being generous. Otherwise, who would want to hang out with him, unless they were masochists? Jingwan hadn't realized that she was the #1 warrior. She wasn't the kind who struggled to survive under the king of hell, but the kind who could tie the king of hell and climb over his head. Since they had decided to leave, they naturally wouldn't stay for long. A group of young masters were driven to follow behind the carriage in a sorry state. Before they left, they cried for their parents and begged their elders to save their lives. Whenever someone fell behind or was disobedient, the guards wouldn't be polite at all. They would use the sabers they seized to hit them. Although they didn't hit their heads, it was definitely painful. Even if they were fathers or grandfathers, they could only watch helplessly and couldn't do anything about it. This was especially true for the governor's son, who was given special treatment. If others were to suffer one blow, he would have to suffer too. Furthermore, he was used to being a tyrant, and would subconsciously retaliate whenever he was hit. Naturally, he would suffer even more. It was simply a vicious cycle. The governor clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Did he hate him? Of course he hated him. However, he didn't know if this hatred was only directed at Li Hongyuan, or if it was mixed with something else. After all, this kind of disaster happened because his own family didn't teach their child well. Otherwise, Jin Qinhuang's actions would be untenable. What he had to consider now was whether to save this evil creature or not. It wasn't that he couldn't take out 2,500,000 taels. Furthermore, even if he took it out, it wouldn't hurt his family. However, after taking it out, he would have to consider the consequences. He wasn't from an aristocratic family. As Li Hongyuan had said, building that courtyard had already exceeded the scope of his family's assets. Thus he could still reluctantly take out 2,500,000 taels. However, don't forget why the emperor had sent an imperial envoy. At this juncture, he wanted to confiscate his family's property and exterminate his family. Furthermore, according to his family's assets, the master above wouldn't be filial enough. Furthermore, the master himself had been targeted by the emperor. The possibility of him being saved was too low. Abandoning this son like this, and betting that Jin Qinhuang wouldn't really kill him? A sixth grade of 100,000 taels similarly exceeded the family's assets. Those who would take out this amount of money most likely wouldn't be much. However, that letter clearly said that Jin Qinhuang's temperament was perverse. His moods were unstable. He was daring and reckless. He didn't give anyone face. Even if it was a brother who held real power, if he said he would make a move, he would make a move without the slightest hesitation. How could they be sure that he wouldn't stop because of a dozen lives? Governor Darren, now what should we do? The others were somewhat out of their wits, hoping that the governor could come up with a solution. After all, his son was the main culprit. The others were all fish in the moat that were implicated. If this matter couldn't be resolved perfectly, they wouldn't only hate Jin Qinhuang, they would also hate him. Then in the future, he would have a lot of trouble in Kaiming Fu. Go back and tell your family's foreign. Go and request to see Jin Qinhuang Fei. No matter what, you must see her once. Jin Qinhuang Fei no longer will not do anything to the womenfolk. Although it couldn't be said that women were absolutely more soft-hearted than men, but in most cases, it was indeed so. Moreover, looking at Jin Qinhuang Fei, she didn't have that kind of vicious temperament. That letter also said that they had to pay attention to Jin Qinhuang Fei. It seemed that they still underestimated this point, because she was a woman. Now she might be the key, or even the only breakthrough point. Right, hurry back. Originally, he had already prepared to let his foreign go, and visit Jin Qinhuang Fei who was unwell. However, there was an unforeseen event, so now he had no choice but to go. Without stopping to rest, he hurried back. Naturally, he didn't forget to send people to follow behind Jin Qinhuang Fei's carriage to watch the gongzi. Only the governor stayed until the end. He looked at that poor scholar and didn't say a word. However, that scholar felt as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake, and subconsciously wanted to retreat. Suddenly, he thought of Jingwan's words, so he raised his head and puffed out his chest. This commoner greets Governor Darren. The governor probably didn't think that he would have such a reaction. You, very good, very good. Turning his head, he looked at that woman. Since you followed my son, naturally you are one of my Governor Manor's people. Someone come, bring her back. Finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left. Not to mention others. Even that woman herself had sensed the governor's ill intentions. Thinking about it, she knew that if she went, it would most likely bode ill rather than well. Facing the two servants of the Governor Manor, she desperately struggled to escape, crying and shouting that she didn't want to go. She even reached out to the poor scholar for help. Not to mention that the poor scholar didn't have the ability to save her. Even if he did, he wouldn't help a woman who had betrayed him and humiliated him. You did so much, wasn't it because you wanted to enter the Governor Manor? Now that you have fulfilled your wish, you should be happy. Don't worry. I will go back to your family to cancel the marriage. I definitely won't delay your future. The woman was stunned at first. She probably didn't think that the other party would be so heartless, shouting that she was wrong and begging him to save her. Unfortunately, everything couldn't be salvaged. A group of young masters being paraded through the streets. This was a big story. It attracted the attention of many people, so everyone rushed to spread the news. Naturally, more and more people gathered. These people were usually awe-inspiring and were avoided by others. They were complacent. Now they only wished that there was a hole in the ground for them to crawl into. Of course, those who had such thoughts were those who hadn't completely fallen. Most people glared at them fiercely. The threat was self-evident. However, what they got in return was the pain of the scabbard on their bodies. That grimacing, incomparably miserable appearance simply made people clap their hands in joy. They couldn't help but inquire about which capable person was able to control this group of bullies. Therefore, in an extremely short period of time, the people of Kaming Manor knew that a prince of the current dynasty had graced them with his presence. This group of bullies of Kaming Manor, except for some who didn't go out today, or those who didn't get along with the governor's son, and didn't get along, the rest of the bullies were all dealt with by this prince. Although a part of it was indescribably bloody, most people, especially those who had been bullied, were more willing to ignore this part. They only said, "Well done." Therefore, no matter how tyrannical a person was, when he met the wrong person, no matter how tyrannical he was, he would be easily crushed. When they returned to the courtyard, this group of young masters were all mercilessly locked up in a small dark room. Anyway, there were enough rooms, one for each person. There were 2 imperial bodyguards guarding the door of each room. This time, they were real imperial bodyguards with swords. If they were obedient, then it would be good for you, good for me, and good for everyone. If they wanted to quarrel or make a scene, then they would be directly beaten up, tied up, and gagged. Li Hongyuan seemed to want to show that he was a man of his words. When he returned to the courtyard, he ordered to find the other important people who came with him this time. He clearly told them, "This prince has taken a liking to Kaming Manor. You all should quickly go and do things for this prince. If you do it well, then that's what you should do. If you don't do it well," then Li Hongyuan sneered twice. The meaning of his words was self-evident. The people who were originally loyal to Li Hongyuan couldn't help but shiver. They repeatedly responded, and would not disappoint. Li Hongyuan didn't assign them specific tasks, whether they should work together or separately. He only let them negotiate. Don't know how many people rejoiced in their hearts. It turned out that things weren't as serious as they thought. So what if Jin Qinhuang made people fearful? In the end, he was someone who didn't understand anything. To fool him, it wasn't a difficult matter. Therefore, one after another, they expressed that everything would be handed over to them. Wang Ye only needed to accompany Wang Fei to relax and play in Kaming Manor. As for the people of Kaming Manor, they could only express their apologies. Although Kaming Manor was also one of the sources of benefits for the master, but now, they had to distinguish between the severity of the matter and the urgency of the matter, and make appropriate choices. Some people only wanted to say, "I hope you can be naive until the end. When the time comes, not only will you not be of help, but you will also fall into it." Being ruthless and black-hearted was the true nature of the king of hell. In a place like Jiangnan, those who coveted the throne would not be easily let off. The same manor, the same county, it was impossible for it to be controlled by one person. Now the people of each faction wanted to go to their own home ground to investigate. They wanted to help hide some important things, but they also needed to see if the people of the other factions would allow it. Even if it wasn't this kind of situation, Li Hongyuan would also turn it into this kind of situation. On the surface, there was peace, but in the dark, there were various kinds of hindrances. When Li Hongyuan pulled in the net, the things that they thought were hidden would be exposed by others. And Li Hongyuan didn't need to do much. He could just sit alone on the fishing platform. In fact, at this time, the more they did, the more mistakes they would make. If they obediently wrote a memorial and admitted their mistakes, perhaps Lu Qingdi would still be lenient. Everything had been planned out by Li Hongyuan when he was setting up the plan. And when Li Hongyuan summoned these people, Jingwan also received the madams who came. Originally, They were prepared to be rejected at the door and possibly put on a show of crying, making a fuss, and threatening to hang themselves. In the end, all their preparations were useless. Not only did Jingwan let them in at the first moment, she was also polite, and had people serve them good tea and snacks. Before this cup of tea was finished, she herself appeared. Once again, they thought that they would be left out to drink a stomach full of tea, but it was all in vain. Jingwan's clothes were not particularly formal and grand, and the jewelry on her body was also very simple. She even wore a string of Buddhist beads on one of her wrists. But if one looked carefully, one would find that although it was simple, each of them was exquisite, expensive, generous, and dignified. Even many of them in their generation might not be able to have such a thing. No wonder the men in the family all said to bring some new and exquisite things to the door. It would be better if it was rare flowers and plants. As for the other things, no matter how expensive they were in their eyes, they would not be taken seriously by them. However, they were all surprised by Jingwan's young age, or rather young age. Of course, only people who had no understanding of Li Hongyuan's love history would think so. After all, this matter in Jiangnan had nothing to do with him. The business was more important, so who would mention these irrelevant things? Because Jingwan's attitude was easygoing, but she did not lose her composure. She did not say anything else, and just chatted with them about daily life. It did not feel like she was deliberately avoiding today's important matter. In fact, Jingwan immediately felt that these people's moods were different. Some of them were anxious, while others were indifferent. Jingwan could also guess the reason. It was nothing more than the difference between biological children and not biological children. If it was a grandfather and a grandson, it would be fine. But how could it be the same as running around for their own son and running around for the son of a concubine? However, there was one person who was especially friendly. She only praised Jingwan to the heavens. Her mouth was as sweet as honey. However, this soup of love did not have any effect on Jingwan. Moreover, she found that the others did not pay much attention to her. If it was not a problem with their character, then it was, "Which family is this madam from?" Replying to the princess, "This concubine is, Your Highness, she is the administrative commissioner's wife, Madame Ru." Another madam by the side spoke first. As expected, there was such a person among the group of official wives. Unless the official wife's family wanted the administrative commissioner, no official wife would associate with other people's concubines. It was a pity that none of the madams here today needed to curry favor with the other party. The person who was smiling like a flower and had a glib tongue suddenly changed her expression. But in the next moment, she put on a smile again. "Your Highness, this concubine. I didn't know that a concubine could go out to socialize, especially in front of me." This was the first time Jingwan called herself a concubine since her marriage. Her attitude could not be more obvious. "Come, send the guests away. Pass down the order that no one from the administrative commissioner's family is allowed to come here." The administrative commissioner's wife, Madame Ru, probably did not expect that Lin Mingya, who was so amiable just a moment ago, would suddenly turn hostile. "No, Your Highness, it's because my family's madam is seriously ill and cannot get out of bed. That's why Laoi let this concubine replace." Jingwan's eyes turned sharp and swept over. The person who was trying to defend herself seemed to be strangled and couldn't spit out a word. Madame Ru, please leave. If I let someone throw you out, I'm afraid that it would be even more unsightly." Jingwan's wet nurse was now promoted to a steward mama. Speaking of which, in the Wangfu, before the Wangfei married, there would be at least 2 steward mamas to serve the master. Jin Qin Wangfu was an exception. Li Hongyuan's wet nurse had died of an illness when he was 11 years old. After he opened the fu, what does an old woman want to do? At that time, none of the women above were able to enter Jin Qin Wangfu. Therefore, in Jin Qin Wangfu, there was no one who could restrain Jingwan. In other Wangfu, because they had healed a Wang Yan claimed credit, they took advantage of their seniority and pointed fingers at Wang Fei. This situation had long been completely strangled by Li Hongyuan. If you pointed fingers at his sweetheart, he would let you break your hands and feet. Although she was unwilling, she could only leave. Moreover, She couldn't show any resentment. However, she was a concubine who could replace the mistress to go out. Naturally, she had high standards in all aspects and wouldn't let people catch her in such an obvious place. Her rules were not wrong. After the eyesore left, Jingwan's expression returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Only compared to before, the scene was slightly colder. Most likely, they didn't think that Jingwan would be so decisive, chasing people away just like that. Like them. Even if it was the governor's wife or the governor's wife. Even if they didn't like them, they would at most give them the cold shoulder. However, this wasn't the time to talk about this. Their own children were the key. But such a large sum of money. Wang Fei Nyang, although it is very rude. Jingwan slightly waved her hand. I know the purpose of everyone's visit, so there is no need to say anything. Although I am not a mother yet, but sooner or later, I will come to this step. I can understand the general feeling. Because there are people supporting the family, it is normal for the children to be poor. As parents and grandparents, all of you probably think so. However, if you put yourself in their shoes, just think about it. Just like today, when the prince replaced your children's role, how you feel now, and how the families of those who were harmed by your children feel. The pain your children are suffering now is also the pain of those who were harmed by them. Because of their inferior status, they suffered undeserved misfortune. Although the prince's status is higher, it is still reasonable for him to kill people for money. They are all raised by their parents. Who doesn't want them to live a peaceful and happy life? In fact, in terms of age, I am only a junior to all of you. Because of my status, I said a few more words. If you think you can listen, please listen. This is just a one-sided opinion. Because of my young age, I have less experience and don't understand many things. Madams, please don't blame me. Your Highness, you are too serious. It is us who are shallow. We are ashamed. That's right. Such a simple truth was not as clear as a junior's. In fact, those who were of a lower status should understand this. They were bullied by someone they couldn't afford to offend, so they had to take revenge on someone of a lower status to feel better. Jingwan smiled. The prince is a prince. He was born noble, and is favored by His Majesty. Forgive me for being disrespectful, but when it comes to lawlessness, there is probably no one in the entire Qi Yuan who can compete with him. Most people will more or less be restrained by others, but he is different, so he always does as he pleases. If he is unhappy, everyone will be unhappy with him. However, the prince won't take the initiative to cause trouble. So if you don't provoke him, he probably won't even look at you. Speaking of which, the prince is actually quite protective. Today's matter is partly because of me. However, it is true that the governor's wife's son went overboard and was unpleasant to the eye. The others were the result of the prince's anger. The governor's wife was a grandmother a long time ago. Her face was flushed red, but it was unknown whether it was due to shame or anger. Because the prince is favored by His Majesty, His Majesty has piled the best things in the world on him since he was young. It is widely acknowledged that his food and clothing are better than His Majesty's. He has never worried about money. To put it bluntly, he has no concept of money at all. He can use silver as copper coins. So there is no difference between 100,000 taels of silver and 100,000 copper coins. In fact, 100,000 copper coins is only 100 taels of silver. How can 100,000 taels of silver and 100 taels of silver be the same? Therefore, the prince's words at that time were just a casual remark. He didn't think that you can't afford it. However, he is a prince, and as his wife, I can't embarrass him in public. Therefore, madams, you can rest assured that I will persuade the prince. However, since he has said it, it is not possible to waive all the money. I can guarantee that it will be much less than the original amount. Hearing her words, the madams all heaved a sigh of relief and thanked her profusely. They also said that as long as Jingwan gave them a number, they would immediately go back to raise money. Actually, I have a suggestion. Why don't the madams listen to it? Jingwan said with a little calculation in her eyes. There's no harm in speaking your mind, esteemed Wang Fei. At this moment, their favorability towards Jingwan soared. Jingwan had a deeper meaning as she waved the people beside her away. When a woman marries, She must be filial to her parents-in-law, serve her husband, take care of her children, and take care of her uncles and aunts. It is a hard job, but most of the time, men don't care about it and think that it is natural. Not only that, they have a bunch of concubines in their rooms, and ask their wives to be virtuous and magnanimous. They have taken all the good things in the world, so they should occasionally repay them a little. After saying this, Jingwan stopped and took a sip of her tea. The madams couldn't stop their hearts from beating fast as they eagerly looked at Jingwan. Madams, when you go back home, tell your families that you have begged me. I have only agreed to ask the prince for a few more days. After that, you can come to the courtyard again. We won't do anything other than drink tea and chat. When you go back, you can bring back some good news. Let them feel that whether it is money or their children, they need to rely on you to save them. Like this, I don't believe that they will remain indifferent. As for what to do, it will be up to the madams. It had to be said, which one of them wasn't a shrewd person. Moreover, most of them were fighting machines in the inner courtyard. How could they not take advantage of such a good opportunity? With their acting skills, they could use any kind of emotion. They could be as sad as they could be, and as anxious as they could be. They could grasp the degree of emotion well. Taking this opportunity, even if they did not benefit themselves, they could benefit their children and grandchildren, especially those who came for the sake of the illegitimate sons. As long as they revealed a little and begged the Jin Wangfei, there might be hope. They would not beg them to come to Jingwan. Those who had the intention of favoring the concubine and neglecting the wife would have to obediently take out more benefits. Only those couples who didn't have any barriers between them would not accept Jingwan's proposal. But were there any of them? No. They looked at each other, and then stood up to give a bow. They were sincerely thanking her. Jingwan waved her hand. There's no need for that. I just don't like it, that's all. Everyone knew about the unfinished words. Madame Ru, who had unceremoniously chased away the political envoy, was the best proof. But to go to such an extent and scheme against her husband, under normal circumstances, few people would think this way. Esteemed princess consort, but His Highness. Because of Jingwan's words, the relationship between the two sides seemed to have become much closer. They couldn't help but start to care about her. That's not it. His Highness is very good. The prince's mansion doesn't have any secondary concubines or concubines. I just don't have a good impression of any of them. It was no wonder that Jingwan used the word concubine. That was because she still had a mother-in-law who was a concubine. If word got out, she would be in trouble. If some things weren't exposed, then everything else could be discussed. But if it was exposed, then it wouldn't be the case. Esteemed princess consort, from the beginning, you sent this subject's servant away. Was it because of this? Now that everything was fine and their relationship was closer, she joked. Jingwan smiled. There's no need to expose this kind of thing. Everyone laughed and casually talked about some trivial things in their own families. When it came to Jingwan, she didn't hide anything. Everyone was surprised that she was younger than they had expected. I thought that esteemed princess consort only had a tender face, but I didn't think that she was really only 15. This kind of bearing, a normal person wouldn't be able to cultivate it even after several decades. Everyone else echoed and praised Jingwan. Although there was a bit of flattery, most of it was sincere. Madams are overpraising me. Jingwan smiled lightly. It wasn't until Li Hongyuan sent people to find her that Jingwan expressed that she didn't want them to stay. This subject's servant has disturbed esteemed princess consort. It's just that the evil creatures in the family. Everyone, don't worry. Although they won't be as comfortable as they are at home, and might even suffer some physical pain, please believe that they won't be injured or lose a piece of flesh. I personally think that it's better for those people to suffer a bit and be taught a lesson. If we want His Highness to let go of the silver, we naturally have to let him cool down. Speaking of this, Jingwan showed a bit of embarrassment. With my understanding of His Highness, I'm afraid that even if you give him the silver, he won't easily let them go. This time, everyone was anxious. Jingwan sighed. There's nothing we can do about it. I can persuade His Highness to take a step back, But I can't make him give in completely. We've gone too far. It's obvious that esteemed princess consort can do this. It's already not easy. If you ask me, esteemed princess consort is right. That evil creature should be taught a lesson. If he doesn't learn his lesson this time, he won't be so lucky to have another person like esteemed princess consort to deal with him in the future. When the time comes, should we let him give up his life, or let his whole family die? One of the madams said coldly. At a glance, it was obvious that they came for the bastard. However, her words were very reasonable, so they hardened their hearts and even said that as long as His Highness didn't lose an arm or a leg, he could let people teach him a lesson. Then they all said goodbye, but when they left, their faces were filled with sadness. Jingwan sighed in her heart. Sure enough, they were all kings of acting. Even the people who served them realized that the situation was not good when they saw their expressions. They served them carefully and didn't dare to breathe loudly. Not long after they left, Li Hongyuan came over, and the maids were still cleaning up the mess. Is His Highness finished? Jingwan asked. It's already finished. I don't have to do anything specific. It's just a matter of a few words. But on your side it's endless. Women are troublesome. What are you talking about? Jingwan glared at him. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. This troublesome woman definitely doesn't include you. I hope that Wan can be more troublesome and trouble me all the time. Li Hongyuan hurriedly coaxed. When that time comes you'll dislike me. At most, I'll do something else. I'll never dislike you. Li Hongyuan chuckled. He held her face and kissed her fiercely. Jingwan was about to reach out and slap him away, but Li Hongyuan stopped. He sat beside her and played with her fingers. What did you say to them? Jingwan didn't hide anything and told him everything. Then she smiled and said, What does His Highness think? What does Wan want me to think? Jingwan asked calmly. You promised them a discount without discussing it with you. You slandered you, saying that you have no concept of money, and that you help women scheme against men. None of these should make you feel good. Jingwan counted with her fingers and listed them one by one with Li Hongyuan. First, it was expected. My original intention was to let you do this. Second, your husband, I really have no concept of money. Third, what do those people have to do with me? Are they that important, because they are estranged from their wives? My good heart, although you've made some progress, it's still far from enough. No matter what you want to do, just do it. Even if it's my decision, I'll take responsibility for it. If something goes wrong, I'll fix it. So there's no need to worry. Yuan, it's easy for you to spoil people like this, do you know? There are many things that you can't joke about casually. If you poke a hole or make a mistake, it's not something that can be easily covered up. It's not something that can be fixed just because you want to. For example, a dead person can't be brought back to life. You understand all these, don't you? I know I understand. You're so serious when talking about these things. Tell me, do you think it's easy for me to spoil you like this? It should be said that it's not that I have to clean up after you do something. It's that you have to clean up after me. There's a wild beast in my heart called unscrupulous. You're the rope that binds it to prevent me from making irreversible mistakes. So Wan, you really don't have to worry about anything. For you, as long as something makes you lose your mind, I promise that it will never happen. It was fine if he didn't stir up emotions, but once he did, it made people's hearts unbearable. Sure enough, she shouldn't have started this topic in front of this bastard. Jingwan held back her tears and said with a smile, Maybe it's two things. If something happens to you, don't jinx it. Li Hongyuan directly sealed her words with a kiss. Wan, even if you die, you'll definitely die before me. I won't leave you to deal with my funeral. Hey, you're a few years older than me. It's fine if you die of old age. If not, I'll lose too much. Of course I'll die of old age. I'll try my best to live longer than you. Not only will we be born in the same bed, but we'll also die in the same coffin. Jingwan smiled and rubbed her chin on his neck. Okay. They hugged each other quietly for a while. Yuan, how much do you think we should give them in terms of silver? There's no doubt that there's a problem in Kaming Prefecture, and even the entire Tongzhou County. Kaming Prefecture is a prefectural city and also a county. so the problem is particularly serious. However, there are only a few people that need to be dealt with. Because the purpose of this trip isn't here. It's not easy to investigate thoroughly. Otherwise, there'll be suspicion of overstepping one's authority. You know there's a problem, but you didn't ask you to do it. If you do, the one on the throne will be unhappy. I stayed in Kaming Prefecture to alert the enemy. When the time comes, I don't have to do anything. He'll take action himself. As for the silver, you can reduce it as much as you want. You don't have to be polite to the people you want to deal with. That administrator isn't a good person either. Okay. As for the group of scumbags she brought back, it wasn't that her husband wanted to appease his anger, but she wanted to teach them a good lesson. However, Jingwan didn't care about the governor's son. This narrow-minded man would never let him go. It was good enough to keep him intact. Lord Zhuqianshi of the blackguard, you also sent him out? Jingwan also seemed to see Yu Zhongqing's figure. These two had been inseparable before, assisting other people in their work. After that, they didn't go out again. It wouldn't be too late to go out and play after this matter was completely settled. After dismissing the irrelevant people, Li Hongyuan was also very idle. Jingwan didn't go out, he also didn't go out. It was a typical case of having a wife and everything was enough. At this time, they couldn't find out any news about this courtyard. Each and every one of them could only scratch blindly. The previous style of living king of hell was absolutely consistent with what was written in the letter. But now it was as if he was a different person. If it wasn't for the many Furins going to the courtyard every day, and being able to see Jin Qinhuang Fei every day, and occasionally see Jin Qinhuang, they would have thought that there was no one inside. Of course, it was said that the number of hours the Furins sat on the cold bench increased day by day. If it wasn't for their reputation, they might have been rejected at the door. However, the result of the Furins' perseverance was still gratifying. Until the 5th day, Jin Qinhuang Fei didn't appear again. But she spread the word that the money was reduced to 10%, which was the original money for buying the corpse. The original 100,000 to 900,000 taels. Now 10,000 to 90,000 taels. Every family could take it out, and there was nothing more to say. And the group of Furins were very grateful to Jingwan. What they got from the family was far beyond their expectations. They fiercely held their heads up high. Originally, it wasn't that they didn't suspect that this was actually a play performed by Jin Qinhuang and Jin Qinhuang Fei. But the matter of the governor's son humiliating the poor scholar, it was impossible for the two of them to have known about it. Moreover, the one who benefited from the whole thing seemed to be Jin Qinhuang Fei's benevolent reputation. What was the use of this? The officials would not be deeply grateful to Jin Qinhuang just because they gave less money, so it had nothing to do with Jin Qinhuang's work in Jiangnan. Thinking left and right, it was still Jin Qinhuang Fei's actions that were the most reliable. No matter whether it was reliable or not, as the Furins who really benefited, they had to continue singing this play. After the news was released, each family hurriedly went home to raise money, and then sent it to the door one after another. Corresponding to their official position, the amount was given. Everyone was very successful. The only one who wasn't successful was the administrator. Other people reduced the amount, but he didn't have a share. The administrator, secondary second rank, 800,000 taels, not a single copper coin less. 80,000 taels to take the person back, there was no way. Jin Qinhuang said that the administrator letting Ru Foreign come was a humiliation to his Wang Fei. That was also a humiliation to him. He expressed that he was very unhappy. Therefore, with 800,000 taels, not a single cent less, he didn't want to take the person back. Other than that, he also didn't want to take the corpse back for 80,000 taels. Receiving this news, the administrator almost fainted. Those who knew about this matter all sighed endlessly, that there should be a limit to favoring a concubine. Overstepping the etiquette could take a person's life. However, for someone like Jin Qinhuang who didn't abide by the rules, he unexpectedly attached great importance to etiquette. In the end, it was because he attached great importance to the current Jin Qinhuang Fei. If it was another person, perhaps it wouldn't be like this. However, who knew? In addition, There was a small problem with the governor's family. 250,000 taels were reduced to 250,000 taels. But when they only collected 240,000 taels. Originally, 150,000 taels was to buy the various parts of his son's body. 1,000,000 taels was to disturb and dampen the Wangfei's mood. In reality, the Wangfei said that the latter was waived. However, he was a second-rank official, so redeeming his son should be 900,000 taels. Thus, the final result was 240,000 taels. The governor choked on a mouthful of old blood. He couldn't spit it out, nor could he swallow it. Was he thankful that he didn't collect 100,000 taels of mood money? Or was he resentful that he bought his son's life twice? The money was given, but if his own child didn't see it, this matter wouldn't be over. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653484. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikago mobile reading website mbicken.com. Chapter 280. Whether the matter was over or not. Other people's words didn't count. Only Jingwan's words counted. And that's right, only Jingwan's words counted. After this incident, the people of Kaiming Fu basically knew that if Jin Qinhuang was the living king of hell, then Jin Qinhuang Fei was the living bodhisattva. Although the Furins later sat on the cold bench, it was indeed them who made things difficult for her. In order to plead for them, she and Jin Qinhuang almost had a gap. Therefore, from their mouths, Jin Qinhuang Fei was too kind-hearted, praising Jingwan wherever she went. Jingwan listened to the rumors outside and rubbed her ears. Oh, it seemed a little hot. Could she say that she really wasn't that good, and that everything was calculated by them husband and wife? After hearing a few more words, Jingwan calmed down. Because she had a bit of friendship with the Furins of Kaiming Fu, Jingwan agreed to the banquet. This was a banquet with friendship, not purely a welcoming banquet. Naturally, there was no need to care too much about whether the banquet was good or not. An ordinary banquet was good enough. As for whether Jin Qinhuang would nitpick in the end, that would depend on luck. If the luck was good, he might not say anything. At most he would just put down his chopsticks and not eat. If the luck was bad, perhaps it would become no good banquet. Of course, the meaning was purely literal. At this time, there probably wouldn't be anyone who couldn't figure out how to scheme against Li Hongyuan. Don't think about how the banquet would end up. For Jin Qinhuang to appear, they should thank the heavens and earth. It should be known that a dignified Qinhuang, when he went out to do errands, everything he ate and wore, he used his own things. What was the meaning of this? Those who knew, that was because Jin Qinhuang chose it himself. But those who didn't know, just thought that you were poor like this just because you were a city? Let's not talk about other things. If Lu Qingdi knew, he could issue an imperial edict to kill you. And those excellent evaluations in the past years, shouldn't they also be re-evaluated? Therefore it was good that he attended. As for the consequences, they would work hard to seal it off, and not let the news of what happened at the banquet spread. Even if it was embarrassing, only their own circle would know about it. Even if their rivals came to laugh at them, they had already suffered a setback at his hands. They were all fellow sufferers. If they could do it again and drag their political rivals along, it would not matter. Because of Jingwan's presence, this banquet was attended by the entire family. Naturally, anything that was too flattering would not appear. There could be dance music, but it had to be normal, the kind that even children could watch. The dancers could only be pure dancers. They could not be seductive or seductive. In the end, the dance had to be beautiful. It could be said that he had put in a lot of effort. One table and one table were used, which meant that two people could sit side by side. During the banquet, music and dance were enjoyed. Together with Li Hongyuan and Jingwan, there were only two cats left among the important members of the entourage. Tyrant, the living map, and Yu Zhongqing, the great commander of the imperial guards. The two of them sat together. The former was Jingwan's living map. Jingwan was in Kaiming Fu, so he naturally had to stay. He was an official with a rank, so it was natural for him to be present. The latter was Li Hongyuan's bodyguard, the kind that had to be followed at all times. In the entire Kaiming Fu, there were only a few officials with a higher rank than him. There were many officials in office, not to mention their wives and children. Even their parents were present. In this kind of setting, there were not many people present. Most of them were husband and wife sitting together. Behind them, there were a few more tables. The younger generation that was brought along was not an evil creature that stirred up trouble and would not do anything out of line. Jin Qinhuang Fei had said that Jin Qinhuang would not find trouble for no reason. Thus there was no harm in it. If Jin Qinhuang Fei took a fancy to him and gave him some guidance, it could be said that his future would be much smoother. That's right, he was brought to show his face in front of Jin Qinhuang Fei, not Jin Qinhuang. Did you not see? That poor scholar, because of his relationship with Jin Qinhuang Fei, directly entered Kaiming Academy? The history of Kaiming Academy was only a few hundred years shorter than Kaiming Fu. In Qiyuan, it was one of the three famous academies in the south. The students who studied in Kaiming Academy came from all over the Qiyuan. Any one of them was very outstanding. Of course, there were also some students who were more special. This kind of character passed the test. Entering a Fu school was very easy for the children of officials. However, it was not so easy to enter Kaiming Academy. Unless there was really a special relationship, otherwise, they must go through a strict examination and pass. Moreover, even if they entered, there were differences in the quality of the teachers. Kaiming Academy did not lack great scholars and professors, and Jingwan was able to squeeze him in, which was also beyond everyone's expectations. Even that poor scholar himself thought that he would at most enter Kaiming Academy. Jingwan was able to do this. Was it not because of Li Hongyuan's face? Li Hongyuan was the living king of hell. It was true that many people were afraid of him. However, in this world, there was also a kind of person who had a hard bone. Scholars had a lot of hard bones, and those old fellows who did not care about fame and wealth, and only focused on educating people, were often the hard bones of the hard bones. They could not be conquered by power and force. Therefore, it was said that the living king of hell with a bad reputation could not be chewed. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan was not a real second-generation ancestor, and would not look for this kind of trouble. Jingwan's face came from a name card. It was her second granduncle's name card. The two elders of the Luo family knew in advance that she was going to follow Jin Qinhuang to Jiangnan. They did not give Jingwan anything else, and only gave her second granduncle's name card. No one should underestimate the influence of a world-renowned great scholar. In the era where the relationship between teacher and student was equal to the relationship between father and son, when encountering some difficult matters, relying on Jingwan's relationship with that person, the matter could be easily solved. And this time there was no need to show any relationship. Just that name card, and the person was easily sent in. The living king of hell was unhappy for a long time. Look, Jin Qinhuang Fei was much more capable than Jin Qinhuang. Dishes were served one after another on the table, and they looked to be full of color, aroma, and taste. If it was said that Jin Qinhuang ate the best food in the world, then it was definitely not. These words were only used to choke people. There was a strong regional preference for food. Some things were particular about freshness. For example, seafood from the coastal areas. When one went deep into the inland, the only things that could be eaten were dried goods. Wanting to eat both raw and fresh was just a dream. Of course, in Jingwan's previous life, there was no such big restriction, probably because they did not want to be picked by Li Hongyuan too fiercely. Most of them used the current trends of Kaiming Fu. Li Hongyuan seemed undisciplined and leisurely, but no one could see what kind of mentality he had. Sure enough, born in the imperial family, even if he was used to being unrestrained, he was good at hiding his emotions. Therefore, these people who mingled in the officialdom, they tried their best to become people that outsiders could not see through, but they hated this kind of person the most. It was contradictory and natural. Speaking of which, Jingwan actually had some expectations for this banquet from the beginning. Kai Ming Fu had such a long history, it naturally had its own special dishes that were passed down. There might be other places, but there was always no authentic taste, and there was not so much red tape. This kind of banquet, compared to the palace banquets, was much more comfortable. At least, there would definitely not be dishes that needed to be hot to taste good. When served, it would be cold. While enjoying the dance and music, they ate the delicious food. Li Hongyuan really did not move his chopsticks much. Perhaps that wine was to his liking, so he occasionally drank a little. However, Jingwan tasted every dish on the table. If she felt that the taste was not bad, she would use the serving chopsticks to pick up some for Li Hongyuan. If it was to his liking, she would pick up more. At first, Li Hongyuan looked at her, as if he had doubts. But when he saw Jingwan's smiling face, he did not say anything and silently ate. After that, whatever Jingwan picked up, he would eat, however much she picked up. In any case, she did not see him take the initiative to reach his chopsticks for the dishes. Jingwan was also very patient in feeding him. The people below all saw it. Therefore, there was no need to ponder over Jin Qinhuang's preferences. It was enough to know Jin Qinhuang's preferences. Because of the limited space on the table, there were at most 4 dishes at a time. But in reality, there were at least dozens of dishes. Therefore, it was considered a small banquet. Generally, they would only eat 1 bite. If they ate 2 more bites, it would basically be considered as liking it. When the banquet was over, they would probably know Jingwan's general taste. Seeing that the atmosphere was still harmonious, there were officials who tried to bring their children and grandchildren to toast. They all very perceptively brought along Jin Qinhuang Fei. Even when they spoke, most of them were biased towards Jingwan. And Jingwan basically did not refuse anyone. Of course, she only used her lips to touch the wine cup. There was no reproach. Like this, gradually, Jingwan became the most important, and Li Hongyuan became a side dish. Perhaps everything was natural, and no one felt that it was wrong. Now that the situation had turned out like this, Jingwan was also helpless. It wasn't that Jingwan didn't remind him, but this bastard not only didn't want to take it, he even calmly looked at her as a joke. There were also women who brought their own daughters up. Perhaps they had been warned before coming up. When they were toasting, their eyes did not even glance at Li Hongyuan. It was also not a tiring matter, and everyone had a sense of propriety. Thus, Jingwan was not stingy and praised the girls who came up. When there was no one else, Li Hongyuan suddenly leaned close to Jingwan and whispered in her ear with a chuckle. Seeing that Wan is so skillful in these matters, sure enough, you are born to be my wife. Jingwan covered it up and secretly pinched him. Even if she was born to eat this bowl of rice, her choice would not only be him, okay? This face. Li Hongyuan felt pain, but his face did not show it. He held Jingwan's hand and gently squeezed it before letting go as if nothing had happened. Speaking of which, because Li Hongyuan's appearance was too eye-catching, even if the decorations on his clothes were low-key, it could not hide his luxurious appearance. From the moment he appeared, it was unknown how many girls had secretly looked at him. Originally, it was better if he did not smile, but when he smiled, the lethality was too great. It was to the extent that there were 2 or 3 girls who dropped their chopsticks. When they came back to their senses, they blushed with embarrassment and hurriedly covered it up, fearing that the 2 people at the top would see. As the Furins who had seen Li Hongyuan before, they had already expected that their daughters would have such a reaction. This could not be blamed on these girls who had just awakened to love. Even they, who were already married, when they first saw his gentle smile towards Jin Qinhuang Fei, they were somewhat absent-minded and looked reproachfully at their daughters who were lacking in manners. The previous exhortations were in vain, and this made them feel very helpless. They only hoped that they would not have any thoughts. And just at this time, there was a change in the music. The originally gentle, comfortable, and elegant music carried a bit of decadence. It was not very heavy, and was very light, like a feather lightly fluttering. If one did not notice it, they would not feel anything. But once they noticed it, there would probably be an unbearable itch in their heart. Jingwan's movements paused and she looked outside the hall. The dancers with slender figures walked in one after another. Their dance clothes were mainly white, and their faces were covered with a veil decorated with small pearls. And the girl at the very back was dressed entirely in red. Her face was covered with a red veil, and her clothes were also fluttering in the wind. It was obviously the kind of dance that exposed the waist and arms of the different races. She had made appropriate changes, and with that tightly wrapped body, in reality, her figure was curvaceous and had the reserved and gentle beauty that Qi Yuan women should have. Only if the clothes inside were taken off. Hee. The number of people who knew this girl was not a small number, but all of them were secretly cursing in their hearts. Sure enough, she was a slut. And the various Darren, after knowing the identity of this girl from their furons, all of them were secretly cursing the inspector governor for being treacherous. It was difficult for Jin Qinhuang to be bought over by beauty, but if it was their own daughter, then it was a different matter. Ordinary women were purely sent over as playthings. If they were liked, then they could still have some use. But this daughter, even if she was only a concubine, as long as they accepted her, then even if it was a marriage alliance, they more or less had to give some face. This was not only treacherous, it was simply shameless. The governor and the inspector governor, one was in charge of a county's army, and the other was in charge of a county's government. It could be said that the well water did not interfere with the river water. But was it really so? It was more like fire and water were incompatible. The governor's family had a bawang. The inspector governor's family also had a bawang. It was just that the latter bawang had once mingled in the capital, so he could not be considered a real bawang. That day at Kai Ming Su restaurant, coincidentally, the inspector governor's family's bawang was also present. It was just that he did not pull along a group of younger brothers, and was purely a passerby. So he was caught red-handed. That was the real unexpected disaster. However, when he left the capital, Li Hongyuan had already opened his manor. Although that fierce reputation was not obvious, but it had already made people aware that he could not be provoked. Therefore, when he bumped into Li Hongyuan's hands, he was also obedient. Because Jingwan and the others only found out later that there was a big fish hidden within that group of gongzi. Until now, he was similarly locked up in the small dark room of the other courtyard, and was similarly receiving re-education. Because he cooperated, he did not suffer much. Speaking of which, the inspector governor had an important matter to attend to that day, and was unable to rush to Kai Ming Su restaurant. These few days, the inspector governor's wife also went to see Jingwan, but she also behaved according to the rules and regulations. Compared to the governor's wife, she seemed to be inferior, and the inspector governor usually kept a low profile compared to the governor, but in reality, he was on par with the governor. Therefore, there was absolutely no such honest person. In reality, the inspector governor's wife's complexion was not very good. She was already over 50 years old, and did not have any children when she was old. Naturally, she did not have any children of marriageable age. Her parents-in-law had already passed away, and her eldest son was an official in another place. Even if the inspector governor was still locked up by Jin Qinhuang, he was also in his 20s. Now this was just a Shu's daughter. Her biological mother was a foreign dancer. She herself was beautiful, and the daughter she gave birth to was even more beautiful by combining the strengths of her parents. Even though the inspector governor would not go so far as to favor the concubine and neglect the wife, but towards this pair of mother and daughter, he was somewhat fond of them. He was also attentive towards the upbringing of this Shu's daughter, who would not be able to see that it was for the sake of a marriage alliance. She was obviously a Shu's daughter, but outside, she carried the style of a D's daughter. In addition to that appearance, she was probably the first in the entire Kai Ming Fu. Therefore, there were basically no other women from other official families who liked her. This time, Jin Qinhuang was the imperial envoy, and could not deny the fact that he had no power or influence. The inspector governor's wife really could not understand. How could a Shu's daughter who was carefully trained for a marriage alliance be pushed out at this time, and on this kind of occasion? It was simply shameless. When the inspector governor's wife looked at Jingwan, there was some apology in her eyes. She could feel that she and Jin Qinhuang had deep feelings for each other. Because of a little slut, the husband and wife fell out. However, after discovering Jingwan's expression, not only her, even the madam was somewhat surprised. Because not only was Jingwan not angry, she was also quite interested. It was as if she was completely unaware of the intentions of the dancer. In contrast, Jin Qinhuang still had an indifferent expression. That feeling was simply as if their identities had been swapped. The corners of the woman's eyes were naturally raised. Her eyelashes were curled and raised as if she was wearing false eyelashes. Her pupils were a little blue and looked very attractive. There was no deliberate seductive action, but it always tickled the heart. Even if she was someone else's wife, the other women who were also wives would not like her. Explicit seduction, that was debauchery. Seductive seduction, that was an artistic conception. It was a pity that the artistic conception did not have an artistic conception. The artistic conception did not have an artistic conception. The artistic conception did not have an artistic conception. Li Hongyuan leaned close to Jingwan, shoulder to shoulder. In a place where the people below could not see, he gently kneaded Jingwan's back. It was a very sensitive place. Jingwan's waist almost went soft. Fortunately, she held it in. Otherwise she would definitely make a fool of herself. Her hand quietly pinched him, using the action of drinking wine. Wangya, what are you doing? She was a little angry. I would like to know what Wanwan is doing. This woman is very beautiful. Can she be more beautiful than me? To make Wanwan so enthralled. Jingwan simply didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This could also make him jealous and unhappy. Hey, enough is enough, ah. This is clearly directed at you. The one who should be jealous is also me. That's right, ah. It should be Wanwan who is jealous, but Wanwan is not, ah. It makes this husband have no choice but to suspect. Does Wanwan not have this husband in her heart at all? Wanwan, ah, this husband is very angry, ah. The consequences are very serious. Do you understand? Li Hongyuan continued to knead her waist. Jingwan really wanted to cry. Yuan, there is no such thing as you. I only did that because I believe in you. Belief is belief, attitude is attitude. No matter how much you believe in your heart, you must use practical actions to show that you care about this husband. Do you understand? Understand. What is there to not understand? Isn't it just learning from a lunatic like you? Not only that, you are so enthralled that it makes this husband very suspicious. Have you taken a liking to her? No one uses this as a pretext to make a fuss. The one who eats both men and women, is it not you, Jin Qinhuang? Don't put it on me. If Wanwan becomes a man, this husband will definitely be able to eat her. Wanwan, I will give you a chance to perform well, otherwise. Jingwan shuddered. She felt that this lunatic's condition was getting more and more serious. Could they still play properly? The people below all looked down and earnestly ate. How come they didn't discover that this dish was so delicious before? Li Hongyuan didn't intend to let Jingwan lose face in front of people, and stopped before going too far and moved away. However, as long as one wasn't blind, they would be able to see the small movements between the husband and wife just now. Lazily sweeping a glance around, he was satisfied with their understanding and tactfulness. As for the woman who was still dancing, even if it was someone who truly liked him, he wouldn't be lenient, let alone a woman who wanted to use him. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief. This scoundrel. However, when she saw the reactions of the people below, she realized in hindsight that her actions, which she thought were covert, had been seen. Jingwan was embarrassed and annoyed. She glared at him fiercely. She would teach him a lesson when she got back. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and expressed that he welcomed her. Jingwan simply wanted to vomit blood. Then, she tried her best to be calm, deceiving herself and others that she didn't know that these people had seen her. By the end of the dance, the woman in red was only a few steps away from Jingwan and Jingrong. As she finished her dance, her veil fell to the ground. At that moment her beauty was unparalleled. It was as if every tiny movement she made had been carefully calculated. This subject's name is Su Clan's Wanting greets. Stop. What did you say you were called, Su Wanting? In the future, you will be called Su Ting. Jingwan opened her mouth, mercilessly interrupting her. Yes, whatever Wang Fei Nyang says, it is naturally what it is. This subject's daughter does not dare to disobey. Although she said that, but in that voice, there was clearly a bit of grievance. Moreover, these words were clearly saying that Jin Qin Wang Fei was overbearing and unreasonable. At the right time, she showed her forbearance and cleverness. Jingwan felt her stomach hurt. Say, you clearly have the potential to be a goddess and a queen. How could you ruin your image like this? It was simply disillusionment. It's just that, may this subject's daughter ask why? Suwan. Su Ting's lips lightly pursed as she asked. Why? Didn't you say that you do not dare to disobey? Why are you asking why? What else could it be? In order to show loyalty to a certain person, in order to not let herself bend, she deliberately looked for trouble. Who told you to open your mouth and have a place to catch? Miss, you have taken a fancy to my family's husband. I am indeed unhappy, so you can only endure it. Su Ting's lips lightly trembled, as if she had suffered a great humiliation. She faintly glanced at Li Hongyuan. As a result, the person who had not taken the initiative to pick up food to eat, at this moment, seemed to have an appetite. He leisurely ate the food. Don't mention helping her out of her predicament, he simply regarded her as nothing. This subject's daughter will withdraw. Jingwan nonchalantly nodded her head. In such a situation, Su Ting naturally could only withdraw. But she had just left and avoided everyone's line of sight. Su Ting's gaze was cold and severe, wishing that she could eat her D-sister. Although this D-sister had already married and had 2 or 3 children, the oldest was already 10 years old, but she was absolutely not a good person. Her heart was filled with fear, and she subconsciously retreated. But she was pulled, gagged, and dragged to the side. Then she was fiercely slapped a few times. A slut is a slut. Just like you, your slut mother. Don't you see what kind of situation this is? You dare to do such a disgraceful thing. Don't you see who that is? A dignified Qin Wang. What kind of beauty hasn't he seen? Do you really think that you are a peerless beauty, that any man who sees you will have their legs go soft and bend? Su Ting. Other people, even her own mother, thought that this matter was her father's idea, but with her understanding of her father's sister, it was very easy for her to guess what was going on. At the side, there were also some women and young ladies who revealed a mocking gaze. Su Ting lowered her head without saying a word. Her face was red and swollen. Where was the appearance of a beauty? The woman leaned closer. Jin Qinwang tidied up the bully of Kaming Fu. Even father and the governor didn't dare to say a word. When they said to pay the ransom, they obediently paid the ransom. If you climb up to him, wouldn't you be able to completely turn your situation around? Those who bullied, you can be completely trampled under your feet. I, as your D-sister, will bear the brunt of it. In any case, you'll be sent out as a plaything. Rather than someone who might be old and ugly, it's better to follow Jin Qinwang, this kind of handsome and powerful person. If you really climb up to him, that's your ability. If you want to trample on me, I'll admit it. Unfortunately, you didn't manage to climb up. Su Ting, I know you haven't given up. In your opinion, Jin Qinwang not paying attention to you is giving face to Jin Qinwang Fei. If he accepts you in public, his reputation won't be good. Wait until it's private and find him again. You'll definitely be able to get what you want, right? Su Ting suddenly raised her head and stared at her D-sister. That gaze was filled with unconcealable hatred. The woman patted her red and swollen face. Other than looking at me like this, what else can you do? If you were lying at Jin Qinwang Fei's feet just now, you could really do something. That little bit of scheming in your stomach, you can only pretend for others to see. If you want to continue to climb up, there's no problem. I also wish you success. But if you implicate the family and offend Jin Qinwang Fei, I'll skin you alive, then strangle that younger brother of yours to death. I'll strip your goody Nyang and hang her clothes on the city wall. Su Ting's entire body trembled, but she really couldn't do anything. The thing that hurt her the most was that her father had already given himself to a close friend. It was her Inyang who accidentally found out about it. Now, everyone was still kept in the dark, just because the other party was the #1 salt merchant in Jiangnan's 4 counties and 28 prefectures. According to her Inyang, that person was a big-bellied fatty. On the surface, he smiled like a Maitreya Buddha, but in reality, he was vicious and merciless. Especially in the bedroom, he had a special eccentricity. The number of women who died in his bed was countless. That father of hers who seemed to treat her extremely well, for the sake of money, wanted to give her to such a person. Moreover, because he was a second-rank official, how could he openly do such a despicable thing? When the time came, he would definitely let her fake her death. Like this, she wouldn't even have a proper identity. She was just a plaything that could be exchanged for money, a one-off transaction. If she died, there wouldn't even be a handful of soil left. If not, why would she take the risk out of desperation? Everyone said that Jin Qinhuang Fei was benevolent and kind. In reality, wasn't her true colors completely exposed? Vicious, jealous, and used to putting on an act. Such a person, what qualifications did she have to stand beside Jin Qinhuang? That kind of man who was as handsome as a god. If it was her. So what if she guessed that she wouldn't give up? She indeed wouldn't give up. She was the most beautiful woman in Kaiming Fu. Her talent didn't lose to any of the noble ladies. How many gongzi of Kaiming Fu had fallen head over heels for her? Moreover, her skill in serving men. Any man who was served by her once would never be able to leave her again. So what if Jin Qinhuang had seen countless beauties? He similarly couldn't refuse her. Su Ting clenched her fist so tightly that her palms bled. She didn't know if she was using this method to comfort herself, or if she really had this self-confidence. But one thing was certain, she absolutely didn't want to be sent out like this. Absolutely didn't. Speaking of which, all the Furins were also surprised by Jingwan's attitude. The last time they saw her like this was when Ru Foran, who had chased away the political envoy. Should they say that this Wang Feinyang actually had a clear personality of love and hate? If she didn't like something, she would never wrong herself? This kind of personality was actually enviable. However, not many people had the courage to become a person like her. Moreover, for her to be like this now, it was probably because of Jin Qinhuang's love and indulgence. If there was a day when this love was completely gone, then how would she deal with it? Jingwan expressed that she was suffering in her heart right now, but she had no place to express it. She had already bluntly and straightforwardly sent the person away, but this one was still not satisfied and disliked that her wrist was too soft. With one look, she knew that this problem simply couldn't be solved. Jingwan only felt that she was wronged. Jingwan was harassed in various ways by the living king of hell, so she could only angrily end the banquet early. She also expressed that in the next few days, she wanted to take a stroll around Kaiming Prefecture City and temporarily wouldn't receive the Furins. She also hoped that she could play around quietly, although she didn't show it on her face, but everyone still felt that Su Ting had indeed angered her. But they didn't expect that even they had disappeared. The banquet was held in the governor's residence. The main characters had already left, so the others naturally wouldn't continue to stay. Only when they saw the governor outside, they put on a fake smile and praised him for his good methods. The governor was very good at maintaining his composure, smiling pleasantly as he entertained them. After boarding his own carriage, Governor Su directly asked someone to call Su Ting over. When he saw her face, he basically knew what was going on. But he just pretended that he didn't see it. Although there was no smile on his face, he also didn't get angry. But because of this, it was even more frightening. Su Ting shrunk and didn't dare to breathe loudly. Governor Su's finger tapped on his knee before he slowly opened his mouth. Do you know? Su Ting wanted to pretend that she didn't understand, but her reaction had already betrayed her. When she wanted to hide it, it was already too late. In front of others, she could still control her expression very well. But in front of her father, she couldn't do it at all. It seems that you really know. Did your Inyang tell you? Father, it's not Inyang's fault, it's me. Su Ting hurriedly explained. Your mother is smart, but sometimes cleverness may cause a mistake. What can she do even if she told you? It's just a deathbed struggle. It's not wrong for you to take a risk this time. I'll give you one last chance, let you struggle to the end, and see if you can survive. I don't care if you're pretending to be obedient or pitiful. Remember, if you say something that shouldn't be said, even if you enter Jin Qin Wang Fu, I still have ways to make you beg for death. Su Ting knew that this father of hers wasn't a good person, but it was the first time that he spoke so straightforwardly. She couldn't stop her tears from falling down. Father, I only beg you to not make things difficult for Yin. Why would I make things difficult for her? She's just a lowly concubine, who can't even step out of the second door. Su Ting's tears fell even more fiercely. She originally thought that he still had some feelings for the mother and daughter. But in the end, then, what about her younger brother? You can leave. Su Ting bowed and got off the carriage without saying a word. The governor's wife wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Instead, it was Governor Su who spoke faintly. I'm preparing to give her to Iron Salt Head. The governor's wife clenched her fists tightly and looked at this man, who had a normal expression in disbelief. He closed his eyes to rest. They had been husband and wife for decades, but at this moment, she actually felt that she had never known this man. He used to treat that mother and daughter so well that it made her angry and jealous. But it turned out that daughter was a lowly concubine in his eyes. That daughter was an object. He was far more ruthless and heartless than she imagined. The first time you met Jin Qin Wang Fei should have promised to reduce the money, Governor Su said. It wasn't a question but a certainty. The governor's wife's pupils shrunk. Her lips trembled, and her fists unconsciously clenched even tighter. She thought that she had done it flawlessly, but she didn't think that. I don't know why you guys still put on such a show in the end, but the idea was definitely not yours. Even if it was Jin Qin Wang Fei's idea, it would not be unrelated to Jin Qin Wang. Intuitively, Jin Qin Wang is not a simple person. If you have the chance, it would be good for you to interact with Jin Qin Wang Fei. There are some things that you don't need to deliberately scheme against. But if you want it, I'll give it to you. It's just that, there are some things that you better tell me clearly, so that I can better analyze the situation, and also allow me to make more preparations. You have to know that a small mistake can cause the whole game to be lost. Master, tell me about the situation every time you met Jin Qin Wang Fei. Yes. The governor's wife slightly lowered her head and spoke tirelessly. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan returned to the other courtyard. Li Hongyuan took the opportunity to eat his fill, but it was slightly too much. He really angered Jingwan, and was driven out of the room to sleep in the study. This time, Jingwan was really angry, and there was no way to salvage the situation. Li Hongyuan was a little embarrassed and dejectedly rolled to the study. However, the subordinate saw that he was still so wise and mighty. Li Hongyuan's eyes were somewhat cold. Governor of Tongzhou County? Order people to thoroughly investigate this old dog. Investigate his 8 generations of ancestors for me. Jiji Yaya, distant relatives and close neighbors, none of them can be let off. Digression. Little angels, about that previously, I didn't update much and was too embarrassed to ask for votes. These few days, I'm still quite diligent in updating. After that, I'll try my best to update more. Can I weekly ask for a few votes? It's the end of the month, the monthly votes and evaluation votes can be cleared out also. The comments section has been quiet recently. Don't be careless and leave them. The author will reply. Love you all. https://www. Bicken. com/11/11807/6653487. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Biku Pavilion mobile reading website mbicken.com. Chapter 281. Ever since Li Hongyuan returned to the age of 10 and started all over again, the general situation was within his grasp. Even if there were too many changes due to Wanwan's matters, and he slightly lost control in the middle, Under the circumstances where he was not fully prepared, he almost started a coup d'état in advance, causing Qiyuan to fall into internal strife. However, Wanwan's stroke of genius, in a situation where she was unaware, strangled this turmoil. Other than that, even if there were changes in people or things, it was all within his expectations. Li Hongyuan was confident, but he was not conceited. After changing many things, he had long realized that everything, in the past, could at most be used as a reference, and could not be completely relied on. Moreover, it had been too long, and many things were blurred in his memory. However, if he had met someone like Governor Su of Tongzhou County, it was impossible for him to not have any impression at all. His memory would be blurred, because it was not important. Some things would remain fresh in his memory even after hundreds or thousands of years, let alone decades. Governor Su, this old dog, either suddenly fell ill or passed away in an accident, or there was something wrong with his identity, so that he had no chance to meet him. Just like how Governor Su felt that Li Hongyuan was not ordinary, Li Hongyuan also felt that he was not ordinary. Although this feeling was very weak, because Jingwan was by his side, he was particularly concerned about his safety. Even the slightest bit of abnormality would alert him. If he was alone, he would most likely ignore it. In this way, it could not be said that Li Hongyuan's level was not as high as Governor Su's. It was just that he was facing a group of people alone. The group of people only needed to pay attention to him, but he had to filter out the one with the most potential from the group of people. If he really filtered them one by one, it was absolutely possible to find the one with the most potential. However, according to his laziness, was it possible? If he caught Governor Su with a fleeting glance, then he could only blame it on his bad luck. Or was it because he raised a good daughter? After that, only Eunuch Mu, who had been serving him, and Yu Zhongqing were left in the study. You can send some messages to the one on the throne appropriately. I don't think I need to teach you the specifics. Yes. Yu Zhongqing found the way Li Hongyuan addressed Lu Qingdi a little strange. Just from the way he addressed Lu Qingdi, he knew that there was something wrong between the father and son. Maybe it was one-sided, or maybe it was not. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, Li Hongyuan appeared by Lu Qingdi's side almost every day. Therefore, he knew in detail that there were a few days every year when Lu Qingdi acted strangely. As for the reason, only a few people knew about it because it was a taboo, and they dared not talk about it. However, from Lu Qingdi's mutterings, Yu Zhongqing roughly guessed that it had something to do with the prince's birth mother. However, it was best not to be curious about the master's affairs. After sending them away, Li Hongyuan felt a little sleepless. Sure enough, this habit was terrible. In the past, even if he slept lightly at night, he would still be able to fall asleep. But now, speaking of which, was it too late to go back and apologize? However, since Wanwan was so angry, it was very likely that he would be refused the door when he went back. Li Hongyuan used to deal with things efficiently, but now he was unusually slow. He regarded those complicated letters from Rongchang as lessons that needed to be read word by word and memorized. But after reading for a long time, he couldn't remove the useful ones. No matter how he looked at them, he felt disgusted. So, he threw them into the brazier and rubbed his eyebrows. Eunuch Mu changed a cup of weak tea for him. Master, just now the princess's nanny said that the princess couldn't fall asleep, tossing and turning in bed. Li Hongyuan was refreshed. He didn't think so much and directly got up and went back to his room. Before, when he had to deal with something, he either stayed with Jingwan or waited for her to fall asleep before he got up. He didn't come out for a long time, so he didn't know that she couldn't fall asleep without him. Li Hongyuan gently knocked on the door and then said all kinds of lowly and mushy words. He was extremely shameless. Even the maids who were afraid of him couldn't help but cover their mouths and giggle at this time. In fact, when the prince faced the princess, he was not afraid at all. Jingwan opened the door with a dark face and dragged him in. Why did you knock? The door is not locked. Even if it is locked and you want to come in, how can it trap you? You are sincere, right? And you are a dignified prince. Don't you feel ashamed in front of a group of servants? As long as I can coax my wife back, what is face? Can it be eaten? Can you let me sleep with my wife in my arms? Jingwan had seen his shamelessness a long time ago. Although she didn't know his bottom line, Jingwan was too lazy to talk to him. She was so sleepy. Since the pillow came back by itself, it was better to sleep peacefully. Everything could wait until she woke up. Li Hongyuan saw that her eyes were almost unable to open and his heart ached. He didn't talk nonsense and carried her to the bed to sleep. Sure enough, there was a familiar scent. The two quickly fell asleep. Nanny Gong came in and turned off the light. Seeing the two of them like this, she felt that perhaps her heart could be put back to its original position. She had watched one grow up, and the other she had carefully served for several years. The princess was the best. As for the prince, even if he had many shortcomings, his ability could not be denied. Moreover, his kindness to the princess was not to be questioned. That was enough. In the future, no matter what happened, it was enough that they would be in the same boat through thick and thin. After a good night's sleep, Jingwan prepared to go out for a stroll today. It wasn't easy to go out. If she didn't seize the opportunity to have fun, she would feel sorry for herself. After all, it was unknown when she would be able to come out next time. Perhaps she wouldn't have such a chance again. With a group of considerate servants, she didn't need to prepare anything. She just needed to be in high spirits and bring herself along. Jingwan's goal today was still to visit a few places in the city. She followed the road and went one by one. First of all, it was the closest ancient building. Perhaps there was no awareness of protecting ancient relics now, but the few ancient buildings left behind by the Kaming prefecture were well preserved, had a special meaning, and were located in a rather special location. Generation after generation of renovation, most of them were places where scholars gathered. The oldest one was more than 1,000 years old. Of course, because the main structure was made of stone, it had been preserved for so long. The rest were at most 400 years old. The nearest ancient building was called the Immortals Viewing Platform. It was the oldest ancient building. In reality, because the Immortals Viewing Platform was high enough, it was very conspicuous even from the side yard. The group arrived at the Immortals Viewing Platform. It turned out that this wasn't just the Immortals Viewing Platform. The Immortals Viewing Platform was just a place that was later built in a place called the Immortals Viewing Garden. Perhaps it was due to the influence of the garden that Governor Wei had donated. But similar places more or less had a certain garden style. Perhaps it was for the sake of complementing the Immortals Viewing Platform, but the fake mountains were much taller than the other places. Pavilions, terraces, and pavilions were embedded behind the fake mountains of different heights. She didn't go straight to the Immortals Viewing Platform. Instead, she walked along it. She passed by paths and crossed bridges. Groups of 3 to 5 students were gathered to discuss their studies. Occasionally, there were men and women playing around. Compared to Jingwan's pure playfulness and joy, those women were much more reserved. Especially those with young girls' hair. They avoided people as soon as they saw them. Jingwan found this quite amusing. It was just like in her previous life, when she had been caught in a puppy love by a teacher. Pure and innocent. However, when Jingwan thought about her own age, it wasn't a matter of puppy love. It was clearly a matter of early marriage, early marriage, early marriage, early marriage. She had been gnawed until not even her bones were left. She turned back to look at Li Hongyuan with a bit of ridicule. Just a moment ago, she was still leaning on the railing looking down. She didn't know what she saw, but she turned her head to look at him. Li Hongyuan was baffled. He took 2 steps forward and also looked down. There was nothing. What is Wan Wan looking at this husband for? He couldn't help but reach out to touch her face. Jingwan avoided his hand and smiled. She teased in a low voice. My family's husband is handsome, ah. With such good looks, it's natural to look at him from time to time. It's very pleasing to the eyes. Although whenever there was no need, sure Darren and Yu Zhongqing would consciously stay away from them, and Jingwan could be considered to be used to their existence. However, she couldn't be too insolent. What kind of person was Jin Qinhuang? Even after being teased by his own wife, he was still so calm. Then do you want to find a place for Wan Wan to look at him alone? That's not necessary. If you keep looking, you'll get tired. It's called aesthetic fatigue. It's better to keep a distance and maintain the freshness. Wan's meaning is to keep a distance from this husband, Li Hongyuan said with a shallow smile. Jingwan quivered. No, I definitely don't mean that. She hastily denied. Then Wan's meaning is, I'm talking about other people. Who is my family's husband? It's impossible for such a thing to happen. And be good. Li Hongyuan smoothed her hair and kissed her forehead. Jingwan's heart was filled with tears. Looking back, she saw the other two girls with their heads down and their faces flushed red. Obviously, they had seen what happened just now. Jingwan's skin was relatively thick, although she may never reach a certain person's level. But now this kind of immoral matter would never make her blush. She even nodded to the two girls and walked past them. No one was more satisfied with Jingwan's behavior than Li Hongyuan. If possible, he didn't mind letting the world see him and Jingwan being intimate. From the moment they entered Wangxian Yuan, there was a pair of eyes sneakily staring at them. Jingwan was having so much fun that she didn't notice, but the number of people who noticed was not small. It was just that no one paid attention to her. She was just a clown jumping around. Finally, they stood at the foot of the Immortals viewing platform. Jingwan looked at it. It was more than a dozen stories high. Overall, 3 sides of the wall were vertical, while one side was slanted. The ladder didn't go up from the slanted side directly, but went up layer by layer from the edge. Just climbing up would take a lot of time. Jingwan looked at the stone tablet in the corner. It described the origin of the Immortals viewing platform. Actually, from the name, one could roughly guess what it was originally used for. It was just that the one who did this was not some emperor, but a famous scholar. Because refining immortality pills was a common practice, from top to bottom, anyone with a bit of status would have a bunch of random people at home. And after that, that scholar had been criticized by others. Many of his things were even boycotted, but he was too famous and had too many disciples. In the end, the matter was left unsettled, and the Immortals viewing platform was preserved. At the same time, the living geomancy map explained to Jingwan in more detail, and even told her some thought-provoking stories. When it was about time, Wan, you can go up first. I'll go change first, Li Hongyuan said. Jingwan nodded. Then she lifted her feet and walked up step by step. Every step was a view of the scenery, but when she turned around, Li Hongyuan waved his hand a few steps away and had someone bring over the person who had followed them. He didn't need to say anything. The person kneeling on the ground took the initiative to remove the mask that covered only her eyes. She looked at Li Hongyuan with teary eyes. Your Highness. The swollen face from yesterday's beating was almost unnoticeable. Who knew how much effort had been put into it? Some people's faces might not recover, even after a few days. This pair of eyes is quite beautiful, Li Hongyuan said expressionlessly. Joy flashed across Su Ting's face. Your Highness is too kind. She knew it. How could a man? Digging it out would be quite a collectible, Li Hongyuan continued nonchalantly. The joy on Su Ting's face suddenly disappeared without a trace. She turned pale. Your Highness, this subject's daughter is just want to seduce Ben Wang, I know. But wearing this kind of ghastly appearance to seduce a man, it's really unique. Or is it that underneath this gunny sack-like coarse cloth, there's nothing to wear? Wearing like this, there's more contrast when taking it off. Governor Su, you're not a daughter, you're a prostitute. No, Your Highness, this subject's daughter has difficulties. I beg you to give this subject's daughter a chance. Even if it's just listening to this subject's daughter, it's fine. Su Ting pleaded. She also didn't want to dress like this. Usually, she also dressed beautifully. The clothes on her body were also comfortable and soft. However, although her father gave her a chance, that sister of hers sent people to guard outside the governor's manor. That slut also said what she said, and said that she wouldn't stop her. In the end, her father was the same. He promised to give her a chance, but didn't help her. He only told her where Jin Qinhuang was and warned her that if outsiders found out, her end would be very miserable. She had no choice but to do this, because everyone knew that she loved to be beautiful. Dressing like this, even if she stood in front of them, they wouldn't be able to recognize her. Ben Wang is not interested. Li Hongyuan did not hesitate to beat him to the bottom. Your Highness. Teardrops rolled down, incomparably sorrowful. I beg you, I beg you. Her voice was like crying blood. TSK, seeing that you're so pitiful, you should go and find the princess consort. If she nods, this prince will let you stay. After all, the princess consort is a woman of rules. She has always abhorred people who come from shady backgrounds. If you really sleep with this prince, believe this prince, she will tie you up and parade you through the streets. Then she will throw you back to the Su family. But you better move quickly. When Ben Wang comes back, you're still pestering Wang Fei. Ben Wang doesn't mind throwing you to the military brothel at the border. With your face, you must be very popular. Finished speaking, Li Hongyuan's left hand brushed across his right sleeve and leisurely walked away. Su Ting's eyes were somewhat sluggish. She didn't know if she really wanted to do this. Jin Qinhuang was obviously not a good person. Should she hope that Jin Qinhuang was really kind? But what could she do? The place where she was originally full of confidence hit a wall. She originally thought that without Jin Qinhuang, she could easily take down Jin Qinhuang. In the end, it wasn't the case. Looking at the immortal viewing platform, she stood up from the ground. Even if she might be humiliated, she still had to go. No matter how bad it was, could it be worse than being given to that person? Su Ting quickly went up the immortal's viewing platform. Logically speaking, one should be admiring the scenery and climbing the stairs at the same time. Her speed couldn't be that fast. However, after Jingwan reached the first level, she suddenly had the idea of admiring the scenery from above. Thus, Su Ting was in a tragedy. She used all her strength to climb up, but she still couldn't see Jingwan's figure. Su Ting gasped for breath, her face flushed red and dripping with sweat. Her feet felt like they were filled with lead. If she wasn't certain that Jingwan had gone up, and that there was only one path on the entire Immortals viewing platform without any rooms or the like, she would have thought that she missed it. How could a pampered Qin Wang Fei walk so fast? Jingwan was originally not the same as the average woman, and the people around her were influenced by her. Each and every one of them had good physical strength, not to mention the bodyguards. Moreover, the living Qin Wang too was an awesome person who had traveled all over the country. Even if he returned to the capital, he had developed the habit of walking. How could it be that his physical strength wasn't good? For someone like Su Ting, the most exercise was probably when she was dancing. Because she had an innate advantage, she didn't need to train too hard. It would be strange if her physical strength was good. However, Jin Qinhuang didn't give her much time. She could only desperately chase up. In the end, she really did manage to climb up. When she saw Jingwan was calmly standing on the top floor enjoying the breeze, while she was panting like a dead dog. Facing Jingwan's astonished gaze, she was so ashamed that she wanted to die. Even so, she still tried her best to maintain her composure and slowly greet her. However, in reality, Su Ting was really in a sorry state right now. She was a beauty, but her clothes were terrible to look at. Her hair was disheveled, and because of her sweat, it was stuck to her face. In the eyes of men, perhaps Jingwan liked women, so perhaps it was a bit tempting. However, to Jingwan, who only liked men, like this, even a fairy couldn't be beautiful. Seeing her suffer so much, Jingwan couldn't help but soften. Even though she knew her intentions, she reluctantly gave her a chance to listen to what she had to say. Jingwan waved her hand, blocking Su Ting's people to let her pass. Speak, what do you want to say? Su Ting knelt down in front of Jingwan. Wang Fei Nyang is merciful, please save this subject's daughter. Don't flatter me. I'm not a bodhisattva. How can I be merciful? Don't talk nonsense. If you just want to say that you can't live anymore, and beg me to take you in, you can be a servant or a maid. As long as I give you food, you are willing to repay me as an ox or a horse. You'd better not say that. If I really am soft-hearted and accept you, even if you only have the status of a servant, I'm afraid that you will hate me to death, and will turn around to stab me in the back. If you want to say that you've taken a fancy to His Highness, and as long as you stay by his side, you can serve me wholeheartedly without fighting for anything. Let me tell you, that's even more impossible. Jingwan was 100% sure that someone had already seen Su wanting. As for why she appeared in front of her, Jingwan didn't even need to think to know how bored he was to do such a thing. Wang Fei Nyang, this subject's daughter really can't live anymore. My father wants to marry me to a person who can be a grandfather as a concubine. Wang Fei Nyang doesn't know how disgusting that family is, so it's better to let me die. Begging Wang Fei Nyang to be merciful and save this subject's daughter. Yesterday, this subject's daughter didn't want to do anything to the prince. But because there was no other way, this subject's daughter did this. The one who married you to an old man as a concubine is your own father. He doesn't love you, so why do you think that an outsider will love you? He doesn't have a kind heart, so you ask an outsider to be kind? Why do you think that an outsider should have a kind heart? This way of thinking of yours really makes people feel that it's quite strange. Also, if you don't want to be an old man's concubine, you're willing to recommend yourself to a young and handsome man as a servant. That family is disgusting. Do you understand the situation of Jin Wangfu? What kind of logic was this? Su Ting bit her lips, as if she was speechless. After a moment, father raised me and married me to anyone. There shouldn't be any complaints, but it's really. It was as if it was extremely difficult to speak. Wang Fei Nyang. Before you came to Kai Ming Fu, this subject's daughter was already in despair because no one could help this subject's daughter. If you're not willing to take this subject's daughter with you, as long as you take this subject's daughter away from the Su family, from Ming Fu, it'll be fine. From then on, you'll be a fugitive to the ends of the world. Jingwan interrupted her with a sneer. With this face of yours, you want to be a fugitive to the ends of the world. Don't you want to be a fugitive to the red light district? What you mean is that you'd rather serve 1,000 people than serve one person, right? Su Ting was choked by Jingwan's words. At worst, I'll just scratch this face. Hehe, then why not scratch it earlier? Without this face, will your father still give you away? It's fine to be a fugitive to the ends of the world, but it's also fine to be a monk, right? After being humiliated again and again, Su Ting was also angry. In the end, Wang Fei Nyang doesn't have any compassion. In the end, Wang Fei Nyang is just worried that someone prettier than you will snatch Wang Ye away. You're angry because you can't act pitiful and act pitiful? Do you think I'll be fooled by such a low-level provocation? Let's not talk about whether I have compassion or not. I'm just worried that Wang Ye will be snatched away. It's really wronged. If it's so easy to be snatched away, why would I care? It's not too late to leave now. Otherwise, I'll ask someone to send you back to the governor's manor. Failing to do so, Su Ting's face changed again. Wang Fei Nyang, this subject's daughter really doesn't have any ulterior motives towards Wang Ye. Please help this subject's daughter. Even if you believe that this subject's daughter has ulterior motives, Wang Ye has countless concubines. So what if this subject's daughter is one more? This subject's daughter will always be on your side, no matter how many concubines he has. What does it have to do with you? Knowing that he's a wolf, yet you still let him into the room. Am I stupid? Or do you think I'm that stupid? I'll say it for the last time, Scram. Otherwise, this Wang Fei will have to ask Governor Su for the crime of not teaching his daughter properly. Everyone says that Wang Fei Nyang is benevolent. You really should let people see the current you. Su Ting staggered to get up, looking like she had lost her soul. Since that's the case, Su Ting suddenly rushed towards the edge, but the direction she was heading towards was the most crowded. It's better to die. But when she threw herself at the guardrail, she tightly grabbed the guardrail, the edges of her fingernails bleeding. She probably didn't expect that not only was she not stopped, those few people avoided her like the plague. Su Ting looked below in a trance. Why was every step different from what she expected? Do you want to seek death? What are you doing lying on the edge? Once you lift your foot, you'll flip over. Going down from this height, you don't have to worry about not dying. Jin Qinhuang's tone was light, but his words were cruel. Since you don't have the courage, Ben Wang will help you. Someone come. Throw her down for Ben Wang. The others at most looked on coldly from the sidelines. A living king of hell, other than towards Jingwan, his actions were always more than his words. He had to have sympathy to have compassion. If he hesitated, then he wasn't a living king of hell. The master gave the order. 2 guards stepped forward, one on the left and one on the right, grabbed her arms and pushed her upper body forward, about to push her down. "Don't!" Su Ting screamed in fright, pulling the sleeves of the guards. Wang Ye, this subject's daughter was wrong. This subject's daughter was wrong. Spare my life. Spare my life, ah. She no longer cared about her image as she cried and screamed, almost collapsing. The people near the Immortals viewing platform all heard her voice, and couldn't help but raise their heads. Some of them showed a dumbfounded expression, probably because they recognized her, or perhaps they weren't too sure. After all those clothes. But what happened? Wang Ye. There seemed to be only one Wang Ye in Kaming Fu. What did she do to provoke Wang Ye to throw her down from such a high place? Some ambitious people started to stir. Under the circumstances where they didn't understand Li Hongyuan, they only knew that if they could gain the recognition of a Wang Ye, they might be able to rise to the top. But Su Ting's pleas for mercy were of no use. The guards didn't even pause in their actions. She was just a weak girl. How could she resist 2 guards who were as strong as iron towers? They grabbed her legs again, and with a light tug, her body was suspended in the air. Half of her body was already thrown out. "Wang Fei, I was wrong, really wrong. I don't want to die. Spare me, I beg you, please spare me." Seeing that she was about to fall, in the nick of time. "Forget it," Jingwan said mildly. Hearing this, the guards decisively pulled Su Ting back and mercilessly threw her to the ground. After surviving the disaster, Su Ting laid on the ground and wailed loudly. Noisy. Li Hongyuan's voice was so cold that it was as if the blood in the June weather had been frozen to the bone. Su Ting's voice stopped abruptly as if her neck was being choked. Scram! Su Ting didn't dare to stop at all. She hurriedly got up and staggered away. When she took the last 2 steps down the ladder, she didn't know how she sprained her ankle, and her whole body fell down. Fortunately, it was the last 2 steps. Even if she rolled on the ground, she didn't hurt herself. It was just that her ankle was a little twisted. Even so, she endured the pain, gritted her teeth, got up, and limped away around the corner. Should I learn some of Wang Ye's methods in the future? Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan and asked. She asked him to scram. But not only did he not scram, he even wanted to threaten her with death. When this man asked him to scram, he immediately scrammed. On Li Hongyuan's face, the ice cracked and spring returned to the earth. Wan, you should learn well. You're too soft-hearted. If you want to do something, do it ruthlessly. That's why no one dares to jump. Otherwise, people will think that you have a good temper and are easy to bully. You always make a scene of crying, throwing a tantrum, and threatening to hang yourself. I'm tired of it. Jingwan didn't immediately respond. Instead, she quietly looked at him for a moment. Wang Ye, don't play like this in the future. It's quite boring. Li Hongyuan smiled and didn't comment. It was obvious that he wasn't prepared to listen to Jingwan's opinion. He was prepared to do something to the end. This man seemed to be determined to force her to become a well-known shrew. A jealous shrew? Jingwan really had a headache. Could it be that she had to be like him, who would become jealous if she paid a little attention to the opposite sex? Or if the opposite sex looked at her more than once? No, it seemed that even the same sex would be the same. He was so crazy that he would include women, old and young, and couldn't wait to destroy the third party? His possessiveness was so strong that it was perverted. He was perverted himself, but he still forced others to be perverted with him. Was this really good? Should she be glad that he didn't think of locking her up and not letting her see anyone except him? Although this was only her subtle feeling, Jingwan was at least 70% sure. After all, this man's behavior was very obvious. Once or twice was fine, but 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. He had already shown it before they got married. If she still didn't feel anything, how slow would she be? Jingwan only wanted to ask, was it possible to correct it? Forget it. If a lunatic was so easy to cure, it couldn't be called a lunatic. Let's go down and change places. Jingwan said. We just came up. Why don't you look around? The scenery up here is very good. The air is polluted, and the mood is not good. Your Highness, if you attract bees and butterflies during the tour, This concubine will be very unhappy. Wan, you have to know that this kind of thing is not something that I can control. If you encounter it, you can simply deal with it, and it's over. It's so simple. Isn't this your business? My business is to deal with the people who are spying on you. Nonsense, I'm a married woman. Who would want to spy on me? I've only heard of women who throw themselves at married men, but I've never heard of a man who fawns on a married woman. My Wan is different. There are many people who are thinking about you. How can I not keep a close eye on you? Your Highness, are you accusing me of having an affair? Jingwan looked at him with a faint smile. Digression. Continue to ask for votes. Monthly votes at the end of the month, evaluation votes, clearance https://www. Bicken. com/11/11807/6653496. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 282. Is Your Highness accusing me of having an affair? Jingwan looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Everyone else was shocked by Jingwan's words. Even Mama Gong couldn't help but breathe heavily. Yu Zhongqing and Lord Shi, who were standing relatively far away, originally wouldn't look at Jingwan out of courtesy, but at this time, they couldn't help but look over. These words were really too bold. Alright, it wasn't just bold. Everyone couldn't help but look at Li Hongyuan. The others' opinions weren't important. Only his opinion was the most important. Compared to the others, Li Hongyuan's expression was very calm. Wan only had one reverse scale that couldn't be touched. She wanted her husband to be loyal, and she herself was also absolutely loyal. He still remembered, in his previous life, when he forced her to be unchaste, what kind of attitude she had when she was on the verge of death. He also remembered the heart-wrenching pain at that time. His breath caught, but he controlled it very well, and no one noticed. Because he understood, it really wasn't a problem. But without waiting for Li Hongyuan to answer, Jingwan continued. When a man has an affair, it's not called being unfaithful, it's called being dissolute. Of course, when a man gets involved with someone he shouldn't get involved with, it's called being a romantic affair, and regarded as a beautiful story. When a woman has an affair, she's the first one to be punished. Even if a woman is really dissolute, under any circumstances, it's only half the fault. When a man can't control his belt, how can he be forcefully stripped by a woman? The most innocent is the woman who was forced. She clearly suffered the greatest harm, but no one sympathized with her. Not only did no one uphold justice, but they also put all kinds of unbearable names on her head. Even after death, she couldn't find peace. Speaking of which, this man was born with great difficulty. It's fine if he didn't help his mother when he did something despicable, but he also advised his mother to be more magnanimous and tolerant. Was this filial piety? And the so-called 3 obediences and 4 virtues? The so-called follow the sun when the husband dies. It's fine when there's no conflict, but when there's a conflict, is filial piety first? Or is it the sun first? It was a matter of course for men to have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but they required women to be loyal and faithful. When a woman overstepped her boundaries, she would say that a man was cuckolded. In my opinion, in this world, out of 1,000 women, at least 999 would be cuckolded. They were all humans, but why was there such a huge difference? It can't be helped. It's all about male supremacy. Men naturally set rules for women. Once a woman goes against a man's wishes, it's wrong. Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes and looked at Jingwan. Her resentment seemed to be a little heavy. She smiled faintly and said, Wan, don't condemn everyone. Women's commandments, women's rules. These books were written by women. I don't deny that they're talented, but to write such things, they're simply out of their minds. It's fine if they want to use it to establish themselves, but they even wrote it to harm others. They want all women to be like them. This scourge has been going on for hundreds and thousands of years. Many women have suffered and been blamed because of them. When they reach the underworld, who knows how many vengeful spirits will want to tear them apart. With these books, you men will be even more proud. Look, all you women think the same. Everything you do is more natural and unrestrained. Other than Li Hongyuan, everyone lowered their heads. They even wanted to block their ears, so that they wouldn't listen to it anymore. Seeing that Jingwan's resentment was about to overflow, Li Hongyuan hurried forward and pulled her into his arms. Don't be angry, don't be angry. This person, perhaps because she cared, she didn't care about anything. If he didn't know Jingwan, or if he knew her but didn't have such feelings, he would probably think that she was rebellious, arrogant, and reckless. But now, he felt that what she said was quite right. Of course, these things had nothing to do with him. He wouldn't ask Wanwan to do it, and he wouldn't indirectly do something that she had to follow the rules. Jingwan also knew that she was a little too agitated. She leaned in Li Hongyuan's arms for a while and calmed down. Then she looked at Li Hongyuan. You seem to be quite happy. I'm quite happy. It's because Wanwan has absolute trust in me that she said these words. Shouldn't I be happy? Hearing this, Jingwan was also quite happy. But, Your Highness, aren't you focusing on the wrong point? What's wrong? My point is correct. As for Wanwan's point, Li Hongyuan held her face and made her look directly at him. If Wanwan thinks that there's a problem, then you can change it in the future. Change according to your ideas. I will be your most powerful support. Jingwan always said that his skill of sweet-talking was maxed out. But Jingwan felt that this was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard. Thank you, Ayuan. If there was such an opportunity, Jingwan naturally wouldn't let it go. Of course, she was very clear that in the current social background, it was simply a dream to change a lot and make the status of women equal to men. Even if this man was already the emperor, and she was the mother of the country, it was impossible to achieve this. If she overdid it, she would inevitably be opposed by many. Once she was isolated and helpless, even the most powerful emperor could. Therefore, she only wanted to slightly improve the status of women. When they were hurt, they wouldn't have to suffer more pain. When the official wife was suppressed by the concubines in the family to the point that she almost had no space to live, she wouldn't lose the ability to struggle. Especially the officials. She must let them know that if they favored their concubines and neglected their wives, they would definitely have a bleak future. No change in any kind of civilization could be achieved overnight. The current Qiyuan was still far from achieving equality between men and women. It could only be left to future generations. There would be a day when there would be an opportunity like her previous life. Perhaps when the time was ripe, there would be a sudden change. Perhaps it would be gradual, and would be achieved naturally. There wasn't much she could do, but she had to do something. Starting from her, she had to at least let people have this awareness. Perhaps there would be someone who would take over her baton and continue on this path. At this moment, Jingwan really felt that she was incomparably lucky. If it were another man, she would probably have completely extinguished the slightest bit of this idea. As for the method of extinguishing it, there was no need to think about it. This matter isn't urgent yet. You can slowly think about it. There's still time. Let's go. Aren't we going down? Li Hongyuan held Jingwan's hand and prepared to go down the Immortals viewing platform. Jingwan's eyes curved into crescents. She was in a very good mood. She allowed him to hold her hand. Even when they met other people along the way, she didn't struggle free. The two of them seemed very intimate. Along the way, no matter if it was the people leading the way or following behind, they all pretended to be deaf and mute. They expressed that they didn't hear anything and wouldn't reveal a single word. No one would, not even their closest relatives. However, a group of male compatriots secretly expressed in their hearts that if they wanted to curry favor with Wang Fei and obtain a better future, they absolutely couldn't be fickle in love. However, Yu Zhongqing and Shi Daren's gazes towards the living king of hell were slightly subtle. In the capital, when it came to beauty, Jin Qinhuang would definitely bear the brunt. No matter how the others were, they could all stand to the side. The beauties that he kept in his courtyard were all genuine goods. Could it be that they were all just for show and decorations? Or could it be that Jin Qinhuang's charm was too great, that Jin Qinhuang had completely given up his heart and viewed all the beauties in the world as skeletons, leaving only one person in his eyes? If this kind of situation was known by the world, it was very likely that Jin Qinhuang would be labeled as a femme fatale. However, this had nothing to do with them. It was just that along the way, they met more and more people, especially the young students. Li Hongyuan didn't say anything. He just had an expressionless face and looked exceptionally cold. Basically, people would take the initiative to step aside and wouldn't come forward to make trouble. It was just that everyone was very curious about the things that happened on the Immortals viewing platform. Jingwan and the others went to another place. It was the Kaming Prefecture's treasury. In reality, this treasury actually belonged to Kaming Academy. It was even a part of Kaming Academy. However, later on, a dean opened this treasury to the public and didn't want to disturb the daily studies of the students in the academy, so it was separated out. This Kaming treasury naturally didn't only contain the most detailed history of Kaming Prefecture. The collection of books inside was actually very rich. There were even some pornography. Of course, it was stored in a special area and generally couldn't be accessed. 90% of the books in the Kaming treasury were freely available to the students of Kaming Academy. The remaining 30% were freely available to the public. These books were placed in different buildings, and the numerous buildings were distributed in the large garden. Because all the books, other than the students of Kaming Academy, other people couldn't be lent out. However, they could be copied inside. Therefore, there were a lot of people in this garden. No matter if it was reading or copying, it was like this almost every day. Jingwan and the others had quite a lot of people. It didn't seem appropriate for them to go in like a swarm of bees. Thus, they spread out outside, since it was open to the public. Then, other than those who were covered in dirt, basically everyone could enter. But even so, the people who came here were mostly scholars. The age range was very large, and only a few women were mixed in. Looking around, it was basically quiet. Even if they interacted with each other, it was also whispered. The atmosphere looked very good. To be honest, Jingwan liked this place very much. Jingwan's goal was the history of Kaming Prefecture. As for the other books, as long as she wanted, she could naturally find anything. However, seeing this scene, Jingwan wasn't in a hurry. She was ready to look around. Along the way, she met some acquaintances. Although Jingwan said that she didn't want to be disturbed, when they met face to face, they greeted her. Jingwan smiled and nodded in response. On the other hand, Li Hongyuan stood beside Jingwan without saying a word. He seemed to be particularly cold. Although he was good-looking, his aura was scary. Naturally, not many people approached him. Jingwan smiled to herself. After walking around half a circle, Jingwan found a small problem. Most of the people here wore different kinds of clothes. There was a group of people who wore the same clothes. There weren't many people, but they occupied the best position in the entire garden. They were clearly separated from the others. She casually asked the others. It turned out that they were the students of Kaming Academy. After all, this was the territory of Kaming Academy. As the students of Kaming Academy, it seemed to be normal for them to be a little special. Moreover, they only occupied a slightly better place. However, these people seemed to have a kind of attitude of superiority. Looking at it carefully, it seemed to be understandable. After all, these people were outstanding students from all over the country. Moreover, they were generally young. The oldest was not more than 30 years old. It was normal for them to have a sense of superiority. Jingwan was about to pull Li Hongyuan away when she saw a familiar figure. He was also wearing the students' clothes of Kaming Academy. If it wasn't the poor scholar from Kaming Crispy Restaurant that day, who could it be? Later on, she found out that his surname was Wang, and his name was Junxing. It could be seen that he was entrusted with the hopes of his family. As the saying goes, clothes make the man. Most of the time it was true. Take this person for example. He looked much more energetic. Perhaps it was because he had obtained something that he didn't dare to think about before. His whole spirit was different. Therefore, it seemed particularly different. However, Jingwan found that Wang Jinxing seemed to have been pushed aside by others. Although he was in the circle of Kaming Academy, but he was all alone in the corner. Generally speaking, when encountering this kind of thing, there might be a problem with his mentality. Looking carefully, very good, no problem. Jingwan's eyes were suddenly covered. She knew who it was. Towards his possessiveness, Jingwan didn't want to correct it. If he didn't want to look, then don't look. 3 other students suddenly came forward. The 2 people at the back were obviously led by the one who took a step forward. That person looked and knew that he was a superior existence in Kaming Academy. I heard that your luck was good. You met Jin Qin Wang Fei, who was indignant. She helped you and sent you to Kaming Academy? Wang Jinxing obviously had some understanding. Although from his subtle expression, it could be seen that he was actually impatient from being disturbed. She got up and bowed. Indeed. It's not that Kaming Academy didn't have students who entered because of special circumstances, but all of them were recommended by professors or famous scholars. Their talent and learning might be slightly inferior, but their conduct was first class. Regardless of your conduct, you entered because of old Mr. Luo's name card. Who knows where this card came from? Are you questioning Wang Fei Nyang Nyang? Wang Jinxing's brows were tightly knitted, appearing very unhappy. Even when he was disturbed just now, he wasn't like this. I'm not questioning anyone. It's just that it's easy for the imperial family to get a name card. But someone broke the rules of the academy. Very good, Jingwan also understood. The reason why these people pushed aside Wang Jinxing was not because of him, but because of the person who recommended him. The person who recommended him broke the rules by force. Speaking of which, was her name card obtained by force? Was it considered breaking the rules? Moreover, Yuan, why do I feel that this person seems to have a big opinion about the imperial family? Jingwan said softly. There are many people who have opinions about the imperial family, especially in the south. Li Hongyuan said indifferently. Moreover, Li Hongyuan didn't control his volume. Everyone who should have heard it, including those who were originally watching the show, all looked over. Others might not recognize them, but Wang Jinxing hurriedly came over to greet them. Greetings to your highness, Wang Fei. No need for formalities. Jingwan raised her hand. The atmosphere was naturally a little awkward when he said bad things about the person in question, and was heard by the person in question. However, that person's face flashed with uneasiness. Perhaps he wanted to show off his righteousness. He even puffed out his chest, forgetting that he should come over to greet them. The others looked at each other, and hurriedly came forward to greet them. They were noble and virtuous, but it didn't mean that they could look down on the imperial family. After all, most of them wanted to learn martial arts and sell it to the imperial family. No one was stupid enough to offend a prince. Thus the atmosphere was a little strange. Li Hongyuan looked at him for a moment. Pei family? Ha! He laughed lightly, but it was obvious that he was ridiculing him. The other party's face immediately turned ugly. Perhaps it wasn't only because of Li Hongyuan's ridicule, but also because of some other discovery. Jingwan also found some clues from Li Hongyuan's words about the other party's identity. The other party seemed to look a little like her husband. If he was from the Pei family, it wouldn't be strange. The King of Hell could tell the other party's identity from his face, and that person's expression also seemed to indicate that he had seen through Li Hongyuan's identity. In this case, he might even be a member of the current Pei family. It wasn't impossible for him to be a cousin of Li Hongyuan. The Pei clan is noble and virtuous. They don't enter the imperial court, but they have quite a number of famous people. Famous scholars have students all over the world. The Pei clan's disciples even go out to study and make friends. Everyone knows what they are thinking. This prince's temper has always been bad. Sometimes I will do things that are out of line. Jingwan could feel that his current mood seemed to be somewhat bad. It seemed that he had resentment towards the Pei family, but it also seemed that he didn't have anything. The other party's face was green and white. In fact, this was a well-known matter. The Pei family used the name of self-protection, but in reality, what was going on? Everyone was guessing. It was a publicly recognized secret. The Pei family would come out sooner or later and return to the imperial court. What they needed now was probably a suitable opportunity. The Pei family was Jiang Nan's #1 family. They had not declined for so many years. Thinking about it, they would absolutely not be willing to be silent forever. Pei Zhuoqing knew that her family was using the child left behind by her aunt as one of the opportunities. That's right, one of the opportunities. It was very obvious that the family had other plans. It was just that he did not know about it. The family had always been very concerned about the prince left behind by her aunt. It was just that because of some reasons, they had never contacted him. He was actually not interested in this matter, so he did not ask about it. Otherwise, he would not be ignorant when people were right under his eyes. It was fine if he did not pay attention. After careful observation, he discovered that he and his grandmother looked very alike, especially that pair of eyes. It was said that that aunt looked the most like grandmother. Moreover, the other party was a prince. It was impossible to deny that he was that aunt's son. He came to Jiang Nan. The family definitely knew about it. Unexpectedly, they did not tell him before. Otherwise, it would not be so awkward. Speaking about it, the one who sent the poor scholar to the Enlightened Academy should be his cousin-in-law. What was this? Just when Jingwan wanted to persuade a few words to break the deadlock, another young man appeared. He was wearing a scholar's robe. He looked refined and elegant. Stepping forward, he clasped his hands in front of Li Hongyuan and Jingwan. Greetings to Wang Ye and Wang Fei. My teacher, old Mr. Luo, invites the two of you to have a chat. Jingwan's eyes slightly brightened. Granduncle, he is in the Enlightened Mansion? Although this granduncle was always wandering outside, his whereabouts were uncertain, but it did not mean that he never went back. Jingwan had seen him 2 or 3 times. Based on appearance, granduncle and grandfather actually looked very alike. If it was not for the age difference of nearly 5 years, people would believe that they were twins. Unexpectedly, they could meet at the Enlightened Mansion. It was really unexpected. Yes, teacher arrived at the Enlightened Mansion the day before yesterday. Hearing that someone used his name card to send someone to the Enlightened Academy, he asked in detail, and learned that it was you, Wang Fei. Teacher said that he had not seen his family for a long time, and missed them. But now that Wang Fei's status is high, he originally planned to wait for a day to reorganize before sending the name card. But just now, he heard that he saw Wang Fei here, so he ordered this student to invite you. I also have not seen granduncle for a long time. Now that I have met him, it is very good. Jingwan's words expressed her joy. Wang Ye, since he is Wang Fei's granduncle, naturally I should meet him. Let's go. Li Hongyuan nodded. Everyone knew that old Mr. Luo had no wife or children, and was closest to an older brother. This older brother was previously the Minister of Rights, and was currently the Minister of Appointments. Thinking about it, to be able to become a Wang Fei, she must be his direct descendant. To a certain extent, wasn't it the same as being old Mr. Luo's direct descendant? With the honor of Wang Fei, using grandfather's name card to send someone to the academy seemed to be completely fine. It was simply unreasonable for them to reject Wang Jinxing. Moreover, according to Wang Jinxing's situation that day, Jean Wang Fei was clearly someone who held righteousness in her heart. Because that Luo Darren was promoted to the Minister of Appointments, old Mr. Luo, this great scholar's status rose even more. It was still that sentence. 9 out of 10 scholars were aspiring to be in the imperial court. First, there was the great scholar's benefactor as a teacher. Then there was the benefactor's senior brother, who was in charge of the Ministry of Appointments. This condition was simply too good. Countless students flocked to this old Mr. Luo like a flock of ducks. It was a pity that this old Mr. Luo had already stopped accepting disciples 2 years ago. At most, he was lecturing at a certain academy, but his whereabouts were really erratic. Today he was here. Tomorrow he could be in another place. His whereabouts were unknown. However, this kind of person having a little bit of eccentricity was actually normal. Carefully glancing at Pei Zhuoqing's strangely bad complexion, what was that? As if he did not see anything. And Pei Zhuoqing, who carelessly lost her face, unconsciously clenched her fists. Turning her head back, she fiercely glared at a certain little follower behind her. He had returned home a few days ago, and had only returned to Kaiming Academy this morning. being whispered in his ear by other people. He had always despised people who broke the rules. That was why he had a moment ago. The result was that he was actually used by other people, making people laugh at him like this. At this time, his complexion was a little green. He directly flicked his sleeves and left. How to handle this matter? He still had to think carefully. If his family members really pressed the opportunity on him, and his relationship with him was strained. Also, he seemed to have a lot of opinions about pay family members. This was not a good thing. He could not say that he would have to go back again. Digression. Today, Bao Bao was too clingy, relatively less. Dear ones, please forgive. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653501. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember this book's initial domain name, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, Bicken.com. That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.